Chapter 25. 13 Thunderclap Swords. This was the 13 swords of the first stage of the Thunderclap sword skill. Now Lin Xian had used all of them in one go. The long sword formed a screen of light in front of him, flowing with a blue light. The blood light quickly approached. Before it even touched, it already emitted a rumbling sound that shook people's eardrums. Liang Hong was shocked. He had never seen such a strange sword skill. Each sword was faster than the last, and the power was constantly superimposing. The blood sword in his hand had broken through 5 or 6 swords, and its speed had already slowed down. How is this possible? How can a 4th level Mingmai disciple have such a strange sword skill? Liang Hong was shocked. But so what? He was a whole level higher than Lin Xian. Just in terms of spiritual power, he could crush his opponent. Open for me! Liang Hong shouted, and the blood light on his body grew stronger. The red sword light doubled in size, and quickly tore through Lin Xian's defenses. Pung pung pung! The blood-red sword light was like a hot knife through butter, piercing through 9 of Lin Xian's defenses. With a strange light, it welcomed Lin Xian's 10th sword. Lin Xian was also shocked. He didn't expect Liang Hong to be so strong. It seemed that he couldn't underestimate anyone, especially those disciples that could join the Shenwei group. However, he still had confidence in the Thunderclap sword skill. Every sword of the Thunderclap sword skill would add a layer of hidden power to the previous sword. When the 13th sword arrived, it would accumulate the hidden power of the previous 12 swords. This power would be enough to make up for the difference in level between him and Liang Hong. Metal clashed, and sparks flew. Liang Hong had already revealed a cruel smile. The screen of light in front of Lin Xian became weaker and weaker, as if it would shatter at any moment. He finally let out a sigh of relief. Although this Lin Xian had forced him to use his sword skill, he still couldn't stop his attack. Thinking that defeating this Lin Xian would give him 300 contribution points, he couldn't help but speed up the sword in his hand. This Lin Xian is going to lose, one of the spectating disciples said. But to be able to force Liang Hong to use his sword skill, he should be proud. Humph, it's his bad luck to be matched up against Liang Hong. In front of Liang Hong, he still dares to claim that he's a swift sword. A disciple of the Divine Might group attacked. Lin Xian's expression was solemn. He only had 3 sword strikes left. Success or failure depended on this one move. His body swayed and he took the initiative to meet the attack. The black iron sword was like a swimming dragon, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws as it rushed towards the blood-red sword light. F***CK. He actually dared to take the initiative to attack. Does he want to die? Many disciples were shocked. The Divine Might group's disciples were also dumbfounded. They could not guess Lin Xian's intentions. In the end, they could only conclude that he wanted to fight with his life on the line. When Liang Hong saw that Lin Xian had actually taken the initiative to attack, his eyes were filled with ridicule. What is this? Is this the final counterattack before death? Liang Hong laughed loudly. Lin Xian did not answer. His mind was completely immersed in the Thunderclap sword technique. He was using all his strength to control the strength of his body, precisely controlling the strength of this sword. The 11th sword! Lin Xian urged his spiritual energy. His long sword surged and the sword light danced in the air, colliding with the blood-red sword. Clang! The huge force caused Lin Xian's arm to go numb. He hurriedly urged the longevity secret art. Green spiritual energy surged into his arm, alleviating the numbness. However, his sword was not without effect. Liang Hong's attack was blocked by his sword and slowed down a little. At the same time, he became more proficient in using the Thunderclap sword technique. 2 more sword strikes! Lin Xian gripped his long sword tightly. Using the fundamental movement technique, his body continued to move. Seeing that his attack was actually mitigated, Liang Hong was enraged. His eyes were filled with ferocity. He poured all the spiritual energy in his body into the blood-red sword, preparing to finish off Lin Xian in one strike. Whoosh! The long sword danced, causing the air to vibrate. Liang Hong charged over. Lin Xian also charged over. Before he even arrived, the 12th sword had already been slashed out. Die for me! Liang Hong shouted. A ferocious force swept away the black iron sword. The cold sword tip pierced towards Lin Xian's right chest. At this crucial moment, Lin Xian's eyes were like torches. His body seemed to have become one with the black iron sword. This was a wonderful feeling. Under this feeling, Lin Xian slashed out the 13th sword strike. All the accumulated power from before exploded in this strike. The black iron long sword was like a black lightning bolt, stirring up the wind and clouds. The sword let out a muffled sound of thunder, directly blasting away the blood-red sword light. Liang Hong felt as if he had been struck by lightning. That huge force made him despair. He was like a speck of dust, fluttering under the sudden thunder. Drip, drip. After the resplendent sword light, Liang Hong bent over in a sorry state. His left hand clutched his chest as blood continuously flowed out. Liang Hong lost. The members of the Divine Might group were dumbstruck. Their entire bodies were frozen in place. The muscles on their faces unconsciously twitched. Their hearts couldn't accept it. I lost. I actually lost. Liang Hong's eyes were devoid of light. He actually lost to a 4th-level condensing period disciple. This caused his confidence to suffer a heavy blow. Lin Xian stood there with his eyes slightly closed. He was digesting the feeling he had just felt. That 13th sword strike, he seemed to have turned into lightning. This feeling was very wonderful. Remember that you owe me 30 contribution points. Lin Xian opened his eyes and said to the distant Liang Hong. Who's next? Hearing this, the faces of the members of the Divine Might group twitched. Even Liang Hong had been defeated. The only one left who could fight was the leader, Xing Lifeng. But Lin Xian didn't plan on letting them go. What a joke, each person was worth 30 contribution points. Where could he find such a fat sheep? Thus, he extended his finger and began to call out names. None of you are allowed to leave. Lin Xian looked at the members of the Divine Might group and said, Prepare 30 contribution points and wait for this young master to come and collect the goods. Lin Xian said excitedly. It's you! Lin Xian pointed at a disciple of the Divine Might group and said, Come and fight. Don't lose to the Divine Might group's momentum. The disciple had the heart to die. Even Liang Hong had been defeated. He definitely wasn't Lin Xian's opponent. But at this time, if he were to run away, the Divine Might group wouldn't let him go. The result was that in less than 3 moves he was defeated. Everyone looked at Xing Lifeng. His cultivation level was the highest, and only he had a chance of defeating Lin Xian. Otherwise, this operation would become a joke. You've gone too far, Xing Lifeng said with a cold face. Gone too far? When your Divine Might group surrounded me, did you think of going too far? When you sent a 5th-level condensing period disciple to deal with me, did you think of going too far? When you colluded with the enforcement team to frame me, did you think of going too far? Lin Xian sneered and said, Could it be that only you can bully others and others aren't allowed to retaliate? Going against the Divine Might group, there's no place for you here. Xing Lifeng snorted. Don't talk nonsense. Lin Xian slanted his long sword and said, Now you have 2 choices. One is to obediently hand over 30 contribution points. 2 is to be beaten up by me and then obediently hand over the contribution points. Which one do you choose? Arrogant, too arrogant. The Divine Might group's disciples wished they could fight him to the death. But because of the sex rules, they could only endure. Now, the only one who could openly defeat Lin Xian and salvage the situation was Xing Lifeng. When the surrounding disciples heard Lin Xian's words, their faces were filled with excitement. They weren't members of the Divine Might group, and many of them had been bullied by the Divine Might group. Now that there was someone who could make the Divine Might group suffer, they were naturally happy. I will make you shut your mouth. Xing Lifeng slowly walked into the arena. His gaze was like a knife, enveloping Lin Xian. Brother Feng will definitely win. The Divine Might group's disciples roared. Don't worry. Brother Feng is at the peak of the 5th level condensing period. He won't lose to him. Just by using his spiritual power, he can crush him to death. Xing Lifeng stood in the center of the arena, his hands clenched into fists. His cold voice gradually sounded. Make your move. I will let you know the strength of the Divine Might Group. Chapter 26. Make your move. I will let you know the power of the Divine Might Group. Xing Lifeng clenched his fists, his expression as cold as an iceberg. Brother Feng will definitely win. That goes without saying. That's for sure. I only hope that Senior Brother Feng can teach this kid a lesson. The disciples of the Divine Might Group gritted their teeth. If it weren't for the sect rules, they would have already pounced on him. You're the strongest among them? Lin Xian smiled. It doesn't matter if I'm the strongest or not, but it's enough to deal with you. Xing Lifeng's gaze was as sharp as a knife. He couldn't wait to pierce a hole in Lin Xian's body. Of course, Senior Brother Xing is the strongest. Kid, are you afraid? It's too late to beg for mercy now. The disciples of the Divine Might Group roared. The strongest is enough. It's too boring to fight with them. How about this? If you lose, each of them will give me 30 contribution points. How about that? Lin Xian wanted to play big. Xing Lifeng's figure was as steady as a mountain. He said in a deep voice, What if you lose? It's up to your Divine Might Group. All right. Xing Lifeng took a big step forward and punched out with his right fist. Like a wild beast, he charged towards Lin Xian. The violent energy stirred up the air in front of him, forming a gust of wind. On the fist, there was a ball of light flashing. There was a faint roar of a beast, causing the air to buzz. Fierce, violent. The disciples of the Divine Might Group couldn't help but shout. Good fist technique. Senior Brother Xing, defeat him. Lin Xian's expression was solemn. Xing Lifeng's strength was stronger than Liang Hong, so he had no choice but to use all his strength to deal with him. He held the sword in his right hand and stabbed out. The strength of his body and the spiritual energy in his body merged perfectly. At this moment, he focused all his strength on the tip of the sword. In the next moment, the black long sword and the fiery fist collided. Bang! Sparks flew in all directions, and a loud explosion sounded. Lin Xian took 3 steps back to disperse the violent energy. His eyes were like swords, filled with battle intent. What the hell? How can he block Senior Brother Xing's fist? Senior Brother Xing is the Herculean King. How could this brat be fine? My eyes must be playing tricks on me. Many of the Divine Might Group's disciples cried out. Herculean King? You are indeed very strong. Lin Xian's lips curled into a smile. These words of praise fell into Xing Lifeng's ears, but they were like needles pricking his ears. He was an entire realm higher than Lin Xian. Furthermore, the power that he was most proud of did not injure Lin Xian. This result was hard for him to accept. He originally thought that Lin Xian was only fast, but he did not expect his strength to be so terrifying as well. Humph! Xing Lifeng's face was cold as he clenched his fists. His body shone brightly as his muscles bulged like a humanoid beast. He stomped his feet and rushed over again, his fists pressing down like a mountain. The power of this punch was even more ferocious than before. Lin Xian used the basic movement technique, and his body shot out like an arrow. The black iron longsword stabbed out again like a black lightning bolt. Bang! 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 Xing Lifeng seemed to have sunk into madness as he threw out punch after punch. Every punch was as heavy as a mountain, causing the air to buzz and tremble. Lin Xian's black hair danced in the wind as the green light on his body pulsed like a burning flame. The 13 thunder swords turned into lightning in Lin Xian's hands. Every sword gathered all the strength in his body and collided with the mountain-like fists, emitting a beautiful light. Who is this Lin Xian to be able to fight with Xing Lifeng for such a long time? Yeah, not only is his sword technique super fast, but his strength is also abnormally strong. He's only at the 4th level of the Ningmai stage, right? No wonder he dares to challenge the Divine Might group, he really has the ability. The surrounding disciples sighed. They seemed to be witnessing the rise of a new star in the outer sect. Humph! What are you so proud of? Xing Shixiang will not lose. That's right, the difference between the 4th and 5th level of the Ningmai stage cannot be made up. He can be exhausted to death. The disciples of the Divine Might group still did not give up. Within the formation flags, the two figures swayed as light danced around them. Bang! After another collision, the two finally separated and floated backwards. Humph, kid, you're the first person to be able to fight with me for such a long time. But the game ends here. Xing Lifeng's white robe was torn, but the aura on his body did not decrease. Lin Xian's tattered clothes were now even more tattered. He used his hands to tear apart the clothes on his upper body, revealing his sturdy chest. What moves do you have? Use them all. Your contribution points are mine. Lin Xian was like a god of war, his aura incomparably fierce. 100 Beast Fist! Xing Lifeng's feet stomped a deep hole in the ground. His body was as fast as lightning, leaving behind afterimages in the air as he attacked Lin Xian. It's actually the 100 Beast Fist. This Lin Xian is in danger. Haha, who can block a high-grade yellow-ranked martial art? The Divine Might group is mighty! Feeling the ferocity of this fist, Lin Xian also frowned. The first stage of the Thunderclap sword art had another move, and that was unity. 13 swords combined into one sword, the power was unimaginable. He pushed the spiritual power in his body to the highest level, and his spirit reached its peak. The black iron sword in his hand turned into a black torrent, rushing out. Boom! Rays of light shot out in all directions, and the sound shook the sky. The two figures separated upon contact, intertwining. Whoosh! Lin Xian stopped and pointed his sword diagonally, like a king of swords. Xing Lifeng also stopped, standing tall like a mountain. Pa! A crisp sound was heard, like the most exquisite porcelain breaking. The black iron sword in Lin Xian's hand turned into countless pieces, falling to the ground. Haha, I knew that senior brother Xing would win. That's right, senior brother Xing is mighty. Lin Xian, prepare to die. All the disciples of the Divine Might group were as excited as if they had been injected with chicken blood. They had no choice, they had been suppressed for too long, and needed to release their emotions. However, just as they were celebrating, Xing Lifeng's body suddenly trembled, and he spat out a mouthful of blood, falling backwards. The disciples of the Divine Might group still had smiles on their faces, but their eyes were wide open, and their faces were flushed red. It was as if their necks were being strangled, and they couldn't speak for a long time. After a while, the crowd exclaimed. Then, 7 to 8 disciples of the Divine Might group rushed forward and quickly helped Xing Lifeng up. Senior brother Xing, are you all right? He's fine, just a little injured. You don't have to make a fuss. Lin Xian looked at the black iron sword with pity and said, Everyone has 30 contribution points, quickly hand them over. The disciples of the Divine Might group were flushed red, and they couldn't wait to find a hole to hide in. For so many years, no one dared to find trouble with the Divine Might group, but now they had fallen into the hands of a small disciple. All the disciples of the Divine Might group glared at Lin Xian, and then reluctantly handed over 30 contribution points. Lin Xian received the contribution points, picked up the black iron sword fragments, and walked back to his hut. The disciples nearby were all excited. This kind of battle was too exciting, and Lin Xian had become their idol. One man, one sword, to defeat the Divine Might group. Just thinking about it made them excited. Chapter 27. Lin Xian won nearly 300 contribution points and returned to his hut with satisfaction. There was still a month until the inner sect exam, so he had to plan well. His current strength was at the peak of the 4th level of the Meridian's condensing period, and he would soon reach the 5th level. With the 300 contribution points, he could choose 2 martial arts. Lin Xian only had the thunderclap sword technique, and the movement technique was only a basic martial art. He didn't know any other martial arts. But with these 300 contribution points, these problems could be solved. Contribution points are really good stuff. No wonder those guys would risk their lives for contribution points. In the outer sect, having contribution points meant having abundant resources. With resources, it was only natural that one could cultivate faster than others. I wonder what kind of life an inner sect disciple would have. Lin Xian couldn't help but yearn. He had heard Tang Yu say that the inner sect had a martial arts pavilion. Martial arts below the profound level could be found there, and it didn't require contribution points. Thinking of this, Lin Xian wanted to immediately become an inner sect disciple. That way, he wouldn't have to do missions every day and desperately earn contribution points. I don't care anymore. I'll sleep first. Lin Xian took a shower and quickly fell asleep. When he woke up, it was already the next day. Lin Xian ate breakfast and rushed to the mission hall. Brother Lin, good morning! Lin Xian had just entered the door when he heard Chen Dajing's voice. He walked over with a smile on his face and tossed him a spirit ticket. Thank you, Brother Chen, for that day. I'll remember this favor, Lin Xian said seriously. No need to be so polite. It's mainly because you have the ability to win Elder Fang's attention. Otherwise, how could I have the ability to invite Elder Fang? Chen Dajing laughed. Let's not talk nonsense. I want to choose a few martial arts. What does Brother Chen recommend? Lin Xian went straight to the point. What kind of martial arts? Sword techniques or movement techniques? Palm techniques or leg techniques? Chen Dajing asked. Lin Xian rubbed his chin and pondered. He did not need the sword art anymore. He had only learned the first stage of the thunderclap sword art. He would probably be practicing the thunderclap sword art for a long time in the future. He needed a footwork manual. After all, he was still using the basic footwork. As for the rest, he wanted to choose a martial art that could strengthen his physique. After all, the stronger he was, the more powerful the thunder sword art would be. In fact, he had originally wanted Lord Alcohol to contribute basic martial arts, but Lord Alcohol had directly told him that he had plenty of martial arts, but none of them were suitable for him. There was nothing he could do about it. Lin Xian's cultivation level was too low. Helpless, he could only come to the Hall of Missions to exchange for martial arts. Find me something related to footwork and body forging, Lin Xian said. Chen Dajing handed over 2 books. They're all on there. Take a good look. Lin Xian quickly read through the books. Soon, he picked out 2 martial arts. One was a mid-grade yellow-ranked footwork manual, instant shadow steps. When mastered to the phenomenal success stage, one could follow one's body like a shadow, chasing the wind and chasing the sun. The other was the golden jade body tempering art. It was a mid-grade yellow-ranked martial art that could strengthen one's lifeblood and increase one's strength. When mastered to the phenomenal success stage, one's body would be invulnerable to swords and sabers. After choosing the martial arts, Lin Xian accepted a few more missions before leaving the Hall of Missions. He planned on cultivating these martial arts before making a trip to Liang City to buy a better weapon. If not, it would be a joke if a swordsman did not have a suitable weapon. Lin Xian did not return to his hut. Instead, he went to the training room. The training room was specially opened by the Mystic Heaven sect for disciples to ensure that they would not be disturbed during their training. Furthermore, there were bamboo forest guards inside. The training room was divided into 3 levels. The main difference was in the bamboo forest guards. The first level was for ordinary bamboo forest guards. The second level was for red-spotted bamboo forest guards. The third level was for golden thread bamboo forest guards. The first level training room cost 10 low-grade spirit stones per day. The second level training room cost 20 low-grade spirit stones per day. The third level training room cost 30 low-grade spirit stones per day. Lin Xian had already experienced the red-spotted bamboo forest guards during the outer sect entrance examination. Their strength was around the 3rd to 4th stage of the meridian condensation period. The golden thread bamboo forest guards were between the 5th and 6th stage of the meridian condensation period. After some thought, Lin Xian chose the golden thread bamboo forest guards. The red-spotted bamboo forest guards were no longer a challenge to him. After paying the spirit stones and receiving the room key, Lin Xian prepared to leave. At this time, a pair of male and female disciples walked over. Lin Xian did not pay them any attention. He asked for the location of the room and left. Lin Xian had just taken a few steps when he heard a scream from behind him. "What did you say? The third-level training room is gone?" The disciple in charge of recording said. "Yes, the last third-level training room was just booked. You should choose another one." "Who booked it?" the young girl asked. "Hurry up and tell me. I'm from Tsingyi Association." When the disciple heard the words Tsingyi Association, he shrunk his neck and pointed at Lin Xian's back. When the young girl saw that Lin Xian was a fourth-stage meridian condensation period martial artist and that he was not from the three major powers, she immediately raised her chin and chased after him. "You stop," she said arrogantly. Lin Xian turned a deaf ear to her and continued to walk at a leisurely pace. This angered the young girl. Normally, the male disciples fawned over her like servants. Now that she met Lin Xian, who ignored her, she was so angry that her hands trembled. "Humph, you dare not listen to this young lady." The young girl's face was cold. She waved her hand and attacked Lin Xian's back. Ling power fluctuated in the air, making a whistling sound. Lin Xian originally did not want to pay attention to this kind of woman. He did not expect her to attack him, and it was a vital point. He pursed his lips. Using his fingers like a sword, he counterattacked. Chi! The sword energy on his fingertips swallowed and spat out light. It was incomparably sharp as it pierced through the Ling power outside the young girl's hand and touched her white palm. Ouch! The young girl cried out in pain and retreated while holding her small hand. There was a red dot on her palm caused by Lin Xian's sword energy. However, she did not know that Lin Xian had already shown mercy. You dare to hurt me? Do you know who I am?" The young girl covered her hand, her voice as cold as snow. Seeing that Lin Xian still did not turn around, the young girl angrily said to the male disciple beside her, "Are you a stone? Can't you see that he is bullying me?" The youth thought that with the young girl's fifth-stage meridian condensation period martial artist, it would be easy for her to deal with a fourth-stage disciple. He did not expect the situation to go beyond his expectations. In his view, Lin Xian's actions were definitely seeking death. "I'll give you one chance. Hurry up and apologize, or you are dead," the youth said harshly. Lin Xian did not respond. "Mother ***, you will regret this." The youth's body suddenly pounced forward like a fierce tiger descending the mountain. His momentum was frightening. Lin Xian had already warned the young girl. He did not think that they would not repent. He was also slightly angry. The sword energy in his hand rose again. Scram! As he shouted this word, an incomparably sharp sword energy followed. The blue energy was vast and mighty as it instantly hit the youth's chest. Pooh! The youth flew backwards in midair. When the young man landed on the ground, Lin Xian finally got a good look at him and was stunned. Chapter 28. This youth was none other than Tianjie, who had been scared away by Lin Xian in Liang City. Tianjie lay on the ground, looking at Lin Xian in a sorry state. He didn't know why, but the shadow of a black-robed man suddenly appeared in his mind. Thinking of this, his body suddenly trembled. Lin Xian coldly glanced at him, then turned and left. He heard the young girl behind him berate. "Tianjie, you trash! You messed up the mission my brother gave you, and now you even let the people who bullied me escape. You useless trash!" Lin Xian didn't pay any more attention to these two people, but stopped in front of a room with the number 95 written on it. Unlocking the door, Lin Xian pushed open the heavy iron door and walked in. The inside was very simple. Besides a stone bed and a stone table, there was also a golden thread bamboo forest guard standing to the side. There was nothing else, but the space was very large, enough for Lin Xian to use his hands and feet. Lin Xian walked in front of the golden thread bamboo forest guard, took out a low-grade spirit stone, and inserted it. Suddenly, the golden thread bamboo forest guard's eyes flashed red, and its body gradually woke up. This golden thread bamboo forest guard's strength was between the 5th and 6th level of the meridian condensation period. If one spirit stone was inserted, it would have the strength of a 5th level meridian condensation period cultivator. If 2 spirit stones were inserted, it would have the strength of a 6th level meridian condensation period cultivator. Each spirit stone could only last for 2 hours. Lin Xian had just started practicing the flickering shadow step, so he first looked for the strength of a 5th level meridian condensation period cultivator. After a few breaths of time, the bamboo forest guard completely woke up. It raised the bamboo sword in its hand and stabbed at Lin Xian. Lin Xian's figure flickered, and he used the flickering shadow step to dodge the bamboo forest guard's attack. The flickering shadow step had 2 characteristics. One was that it was fast, and the other was that it was like a shadow, always able to stick to the enemy. Lin Xian circled around the bamboo forest guard, constantly dodging. Every time he gently moved his body, just enough to avoid the bamboo sword, but he didn't waste any energy. This was a kind of close-range footwork that required a martial artist to have precise control over their strength. Otherwise, if they were so close to the enemy, they would be consigned to eternal damnation if they were not careful. In this way, Lin Xian used the bamboo forest guards to cultivate the shadow step. In between, he would cultivate the golden jade body tempering technique. When all of his spiritual energy was exhausted, he would cultivate the longevity secret art. Just like that, 3 days passed in a flash. The heavy iron door slowly opened, and a slender figure walked out. This young man was Lin Xian. After 3 days, he had already cultivated shadow step and golden jade body tempering technique to the basic level. Next, he would need actual combat to improve. The realms of martial arts were divided into 4 stages: foundation, small success, large success, and perfection. The effects of each stage were completely different. For example, for the same martial arts, the small success stage could completely destroy the foundation stage, and the large success stage could completely destroy the small success stage. It was said that there was another realm above the perfection realm, and it was called the intent realm. However, very few people mentioned it. His movement technique was still some distance away from the small success stage, and he also needed to buy some herbs to cultivate the golden jade body tempering technique. Most importantly, he still lacked a sword. Lin Xian rubbed his forehead, and prepared to make another trip to Liang City. Outer sect residence area, Lin Xian's hut. A delicate and beautiful figure sat alone. Her slender and beautiful legs presented a perfect curve, and her pair of clear black and white eyes looked at the door from time to time. When she saw Lin Xian's figure enter, the young girl lightly snorted. Why are you here?" Lin Xian had just entered the hut when he saw Tang Yu sitting there in a daze with her small hand supporting her chin. Hee, did you miss me?" Lin Xian had a smirk on his face. "I miss you to die." Tang Yu rolled her eyes at him and said angrily, "Accompany me to a place." Lin Xian smiled as he looked at those slender and beautiful legs. Suddenly he was stunned. "You broke through? Is it that rare?" Tang Yu curled her lips. "Are you going or not? Where are we going?" "Liang! You bumpkin, don't tell me you haven't been there before," Tang Yu said sarcastically. Lin Xian. "We can go, but first we need to discuss something." Lin Xian's smile was as warm as the sunlight outside the window. This was the first time Tang Yu saw Lin Xian smile so warmly. She couldn't help but blush. What do you want?" Lin Xian didn't seem to notice Tang Yu's feminine posture. He moved his face closer and said softly, Lend me some spirit stones." "You! Go to hell!" Tang Yu thought Lin Xian would say something touching, but she didn't expect him to ask her to borrow money. She immediately pouted and raised her small pink fist to punch him. Lin Xian dodged it with a grin and clapped his hands. "Let's go, Miss Tang." Liang City was still bustling with people, but this time, Lin Xian didn't wear a black robe. Instead, he stepped into this bustling city with the identity of a Black Heaven sect disciple. Originally, Lin Xian was still thinking about whether to use the purple gold card from the Heavenly Fragrance Market, but he didn't expect Tang Yu to have no intention of going to the Heavenly Fragrance Market. She directly pulled Lin Xian and walked towards the Myriad Treasure Tower. After paying the entrance fee, the two walked in side by side. The inside was richly ornamented, showing a luxurious atmosphere. Lin Xian looked around curiously. "I'll lend you 1,000 spirit stones. Remember to pay me back." Tang Yu gave Lin Xian 10 spirit tickets and then ran towards the counter happily. Lin Xian took the spirit tickets and put them in his pocket. He walked towards the weapons area. All kinds of weapons were displayed on the wooden shelves. There were many that Lin Xian had never seen before. He picked up a steel longsword and flicked it. Instantly, the sword made a crisp sound. Lin Xian's eyes lit up. As expected of the Myriad Treasure Tower, any random sword was a top-notch sword. He was born in Sword Pool Manor, and had grown up with a long sword in his arms. Therefore, he was very familiar with long swords. "Tisk, you're indeed too young. You're so happy just because of an ordinary sword." Lord Alcohol's voice echoed in Lin Xian's heart. "Ordinary? Why don't you give me one?" Lin Xian said unhappily. Young people have to earn their own living. Don't always think of pies falling from the sky," Lord Alcohol said in all seriousness. "If you want good things, I can recommend a place for you." "You?" Lin Xian didn't believe him. "Do you know of some ancient treasure cave?" Do you still remember the demon pit that kid mentioned previously?" Lord Alcohol reminded him. Lin Xian was taken aback before he cursed. "What a scam! Demon pit? I won't go even if you beat me to death. Young people don't have any adventurous spirit. Don't worry. With me around, I guarantee you won't have any problems," Lord Alcohol said solemnly. Lin Xian was a little tempted. The demon pit had always been mysterious. Furthermore, there were rocks blown from the depths of Taihang Mountains. Perhaps he could really find something good there. Lord Alcohol continued to tempt him. "We'll only be in the periphery and won't go too deep. I've been calculating for the past 2 days. Your opportunity is there." "What opportunity? You want me to find a rock for you, right?" Lin Xian bluntly exposed Lord Alcohol's thoughts. Lord Alcohol laughed dryly. "If you can really cut out a sword from a rock, you'll definitely make a killing." In fact, it was impossible for Lin Xian to not have any thoughts. If a broken rock could hide a spirit root, who knew what other rocks could contain? Furthermore, even though the long sword in Lin Xian's hand was bright and dazzling, Lin Xian knew that a long sword of this quality would not be able to withstand his thunderclap sword technique. Only treasured weapons made of special metals would be able to withstand such violent power. Chapter 29. How can I go to such a dangerous place without a weapon? Lin Xian thought for a long time and decided to buy a steel sword. In addition, he also bought some body tempering ointment. After shopping, Lin Xian went to look for Tang Yu, only to find her in a confrontation with a young girl. "What's going on?" Lin Xian walked to Tang Yu's side. "Oh, you even brought a gigolo," the girl said impolitely. "Tang Shaoling, watch your words," Tang Yu said angrily. "What, I can't say," the girl called Tang Shaoling sneered. "It seems you're not young anymore. I should arrange a marriage for you so you don't go looking for men everywhere. I think the second young master of the Ding family is not bad. I'll introduce him to you another day." "You!" Tang Yu bared her fangs and brandished her claws. She couldn't wait to pounce on her. Fortunately, Lin Xian stopped her. There were many people on the other side, and he was afraid Tang Yu would be at a disadvantage. Moreover, he had more or less guessed the girl's identity. She was probably a member of the Tang clan. He was very familiar with this kind of internal strife. Back when he was in the Sword Pool Palace, he had to face this kind of life every day. "Since you admire the second young master of the Ding family so much, why don't you marry him yourself?" Lin Xian pulled Tang Yu and said with a smile. "What did you say?" Tang Xiaoling's expression changed. You're just a small outer sect disciple of the mysterious Sky Sect. You have no right to speak here. When Tang Xiaoling opened her mouth, the youths behind her also sneered. A fourth-rank meridian condensing stage disciple dared to speak arrogantly here. Do you believe I can crush you to death with one hand? You dare to bully Xiaoling? Quickly apologize or I'll make you crawl out. Needless to say, these youths must be Tang Xiaoling's followers. Their eyes were burning with anger, and they couldn't wait to duel with Lin Xian. You want to fight? With just you? Lin Xian said indifferently. His appearance was very casual, and he didn't put the people on the other side in his eyes. Humph! Tang Yu, your eyesight is really bad. You actually found this kind of idiot. A fourth-rank meridian condensing stage little spiritual knight dares to challenge our Zixia sect. Tang Xiaoling said coldly. If you have the ability, then do it. He can take on 10 people by himself. Like the small fries behind you, he can deal with them with one hand. Tang Yu waved her little fist and said. Lin Xian felt extremely comfortable after being praised by Tang Yu. He observed the group of people in front of him one by one. They were all wearing purple robes with an auspicious cloud embroidered on their sleeves. This was the symbol of Zixia sect. The Zixia sect was the same as the Black Heaven sect. It was one of the 3 major sects of the Cloud Prefecture, and could be considered an overlord. However, why would a disciple of the Zixia sect come to the vicinity of the Black Heaven sect? Sensing Lin Xian's gaze, the Zixia sect's disciples glared at him one after another. Their eyes were filled with provocation. Lin Xian didn't care. The other side's strength wasn't bad, around the 5th level of the Meridian period. But as Tang Yu had said, these people weren't a threat at all. I just bought a weapon, who wants to go? Lin Xian rested his sword on his shoulder, looking unrestrained. Humph, idiot! Tang Xiaoling sneered. She didn't believe that a 4th-level Meridian period little spiritual knight could beat the people beside her. Since you want to die, I'll help you. A youth in purple robes walked out from behind Tang Xiaoling. His appearance was quite handsome. Sorry, the 10,000 Treasures Tower doesn't allow fighting. Just as the youth in purple robes was about to attack, a deacon quickly stopped the fight. The youth in purple robes was agitated, but he didn't dare to attack the people of the 10,000 Treasures Tower. He could only coldly say, If you're a man, then come out. Lin Xian shrugged and walked out with Tang Yu. The Zixia sect's disciples all had sneers on their faces. To them, defeating a 4th-level Meridian period disciple was a matter of minutes. You want to use a sword? Let me show you what sword art is. The youth in purple robes laughed disdainfully. Flying feather sword art. The youth in purple robes swung his sword, forming a purple halo in the air. Strands of purple sword chi turned into feathers and flew towards Lin Xian. Good sword art! The Zixia sect's disciples behind him shouted. In fact, these people seemed arrogant, but they weren't stupid at all. The one they sent out to fight was the one with the most powerful sword art among them. On the surface, they were arrogant, but when they attacked, they sent out their strongest battle force. This was indeed a group of treacherous youths. Lin Xian still had a smile on his face. He waited until the sword light arrived in front of him before he attacked. Using the flash shadow step, Lin Xian took a step forward and directly arrived in front of the youth in purple robes. The fine steel sword in his hand stabbed out like lightning, hitting the youth's weak point. Clang! Everyone only saw a flash of white light. Then, the youth in purple robes' long sword flew out of his hand and stabbed into the ground. The youth in purple robes had a frightened expression as he looked at Lin Xian with a flustered expression. One move, just one move, and he was defeated. Impossible! Tang Xiaoling's beautiful eyes were wide open as she cried out involuntarily. The group of youths behind her were even worse. Their faces couldn't be any worse. They looked at Lin Xian with a hint of fear in their eyes. Who else wants to fight? Lin Xian put away his long sword and asked indifferently. His slender figure, his white robes fluttering in the wind, his black hair like a waterfall, and his body was overflowing with a vigorous aura. No one dared to answer. Many young girls in the surroundings looked at Lin Xian. This kind of youth was the object of their worship. Even Tang Yu was so excited that her small face flushed red. She waved her small fists and cheered him on. Tang Xiaoling's face darkened. She cursed in a low voice, but her eyes were still unwilling to admit defeat. Senior Marshal Brother Ding is nearby. You can be proud after you defeat him. After saying that, she left with a dark face. Feeling better? Lin Xian turned his head and looked at Tang Yu as he asked. Yes, very comfortable. Tang Yu smiled like a little fox. Let's go. I'll send you back, Lin Xian said. Tang Yu rolled her eyes at him. Are you going on an adventure? I'm not free. Lin Xian refused. He still had to go to the Fiend Abyss. Humph, coward. Boring. Go back. I'll go to the Fiend Abyss myself. Tang Yu snorted. What? You're going to the Fiend Abyss? This time, it was Lin Xian's turn to be shocked. Why are you going to such a dangerous place? Tang Yu tilted her head and glanced at him. Don't you know? Some strange stones have appeared in the periphery of the Fiend Abyss. It's said that they were scraped out from the depths of Taihang Mountain. Many disciples in the sect went there. Even the inner sect disciples were alarmed. F***ck. Lin Xian cursed in his heart. Since they already knew, what was the point of playing? Xiao Xuanzi, you have to hurry. Otherwise, you won't even be able to drink the soup. Lord Alcohol urged inwardly. It's so dangerous. I'll go take a look. You should go back, Lin Xian persuaded. It was too inconvenient to bring her along. Don't worry. The people from the combat team will be there. My brother will be there too. I'm very safe, Tang Yu said as she patted her small chest. Your brother? Lin Xian took a deep breath. Tang Yu's brother was an inner sect expert. If even someone of this level was alarmed, could it be that something incredible was about to appear? Lord Alcohol, do you know the origin of those stones? Why did they attract so many people? Lin Xian asked inwardly. Chapter 30. It's hard to say. I've been asleep for too long, but I'm sure it's something good. Lord Alcohol avoided the main point. We can only take it one step at a time. Lin Xian made up his mind and headed for the mysterious Demon Abyss with Tang Yu. The Demon Abyss was located in the Taihang Mountains. It was a bottomless black hole with a radius of more than 5 kilometers. However, there were some precious herbs growing around it. Someone once wanted to pick them, but they fell into the pit and never came out again. Later, people discovered that regardless of whether they were animals or humans, once they approached, they would be sucked into the hole. It was unknown whether they were dead or alive. On the other hand, some plants grew especially well. Over time, no one dared to go there anymore, and it became a forbidden area. Normally, no one would take the risk to go there. But this time, someone found some brown stones near the Demon Abyss, and cut out some heaven-defying herbs from them. This news immediately alarmed many warriors. Many of them had already headed to the Demon Abyss, and even the disciples of the Zixia sect had arrived. It was obvious how valuable the mysterious stones were. After leaving Liang City, the two of them went straight to the southwest of the Taihang Mountains, where the Demon Abyss was located. After entering the dense forest, Lin Xian and Tang Yu gradually slowed down. Although the Demon Abyss wasn't deep in the Taihang Mountains, it was close. Powerful ferocious beasts often appeared around it. In addition, there were all kinds of people there, so they had to be careful. There were many rotten branches and leaves on the ground, and one's feet would sink in if they stepped on them. Fortunately, the two of them had excellent movement techniques, so the soft ground didn't affect them. The deeper they went, the more luxuriant the trees became. The huge tree trunks required several people to hug. The lush leaves of the 1,000-year-old ancient trees covered the sky. The surrounding vines intertwined, forming an intricate terrain. In the distance, tigers roared and apes cried. Birds and beasts flew away. This was a paradise for wild beasts. Roar! A leopard with green spots pounced down from a tree. Its claws were like knives, and its snow-white teeth flashed with a cold glint. Lin Xian turned sideways and slashed out with his sword. He didn't use any spiritual power, and instead relied on pure muscle strength to split the leopard in half. This was the effect of the golden jade body tempering technique. It was divided into 5 levels. The first level could improve the body's strength. Lin Xian's current strength had increased by 3 levels compared to before, reaching nearly 5,000 pounds. There was another reason why he didn't use his spiritual power. Spiritual power was too dazzling. Once he used it, it would be the same as telling others that he was here. The Great Forest was not like a sect. No one would care about those rules. If there was a disagreement, it was normal for blood to splatter. Lin Xian didn't want to expose himself too early. Bang! Bang! The ground trembled slightly. Lin Xian and Tang Yu looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. The two of them leaped up and landed on a tree trunk, concealing their auras. The ground trembled more and more violently. Not long after, a giant elephant with a jade-like body slowly walked over. Its legs were wider than ordinary stone pillars, and every step it took created a deep pit in the ground. The white jade giant elephant roared towards the sky. The sound was so loud that the surrounding leaves rustled and fell down. Lin Xian and Tang Yu had to use their spiritual power to seal their hearing to avoid being deafened. Roar! A white-spotted black tiger the size of a bull leaped out from the bushes and roared at the white jade giant elephant, warning it not to come closer. Bang! The long elephant trunk swung out like a heavenly hammer, smashing the white-spotted black tiger's body into pieces. Then, the elephant rolled its trunk and sucked all the flesh and organs into its mouth. Bang! Bang! The white jade giant elephant roared again, and then slowly dragged its body away. Lin Xian breathed a sigh of relief. A beast of this level was not something they could fight against. The two of them continued to move forward. This time, they were more cautious than before, but the situation seemed to be getting worse. Some of the beasts that they normally couldn't see seemed to have all come out. There were also many demon beasts roaming around, making the already terrifying devil pit even more dangerous. Something's not right. Why are there so many demon beasts here? They're almost as deep as the Taihang Mountains. Lin Xian frowned. Something must have happened. Could it be related to those stones? Tang Yu said with a nervous expression. There are some things we don't know yet. Lin Xian nodded. It's too dangerous inside. Do you still want to go in? I want to see my brother. I'm a little worried about him. Tang Yu hesitated. How many of the inner sect disciples are here? Lin Xian asked. I'm not sure, but I think there are some from each of the 3 factions. Tang Yu thought for a moment and said, Many of the inner sect disciples are doing missions in the outer sect, and some are fighting the demon beasts at the front line. There aren't many left in the inner sect. Lin Xian's heart was heavy. He thought that only the outer sect disciples would come. He didn't expect that even the inner sect disciples would show up. I'll stay with you until you see your brother. Lin Xian patted Tang Yu's shoulder and said with a smile. The two of them didn't stop. They were already very far from the Black Heaven sect, and the sky was getting dark. If they couldn't find a place to rest before nightfall, they would be in danger. Finally, in the evening, Lin Xian found a cave. There was a small lake beside the cave, which was suitable for resting. Lin Xian and Tang Yu tidied up and decided to stay for the time being. They would continue their journey the next day. After all, this was a primeval forest, and the night was still very dangerous. In the evening, the flames danced in the forest. Lin Xian hunted a wild boar, then skinned it clean by the lake and placed it on the fire rack. Tang Yu was like a greedy little kitten, drooling nonstop at the side. Lin Xian watched from the side with a faint smile on his face. Suddenly, he frowned and looked ahead. At this moment, a cry of surprise came. Big brother, there's a fire here! Haha, great, finally we don't have to travel at night! A rough voice came. Lin Xian sat up straight, and immediately grasped his long sword in his hand, ready to attack at any time. Tang Yu also looked around vigilantly. We are the blood-red mercenary group, sorry to disturb you. A loud laugh came, and then 5 figures appeared in front of Lin Xian. They were a group of tall and sturdy young men, about 20 to 30 years old. Each of them had a bag on their back and a sword on their body. They looked tired. "I'm Du Ping from the blood-red mercenary group. These are my brothers. They got lost in the mountains and want to stay here for the night. I hope you can make an exception." Lin Xian glanced at them. Their faces were cold, and their eyes were sharp. It was obvious that they lived on the edge of a knife. What made Lin Xian even more surprised was that the young man named Du Ping had reached the 6th stage of the meridian condensing stage. The others were around the 5th stage. If these people want to fight, they don't need to do so. It seems that they just want to stay for the night. Lin Xian thought. We are the sons and daughters of the Jianghu. When we are outside, we should take care of each other. Lin Xian smiled and made a gesture of invitation. Ha, then we won't be polite. Du Ping laughed, and then walked over with his brothers. Chapter 31. Du Ping's group of 5 hurriedly unloaded their belongings and sat around the bonfire with their backpacks. The blood-red mercenary group took out some food and alcohol from their backpacks and placed them on the ground. Du Ping picked up 2 pieces of leopard meat and a flask of alcohol and handed them over. Little brother, this is the food we prepared. Have a taste. Du Ping appeared very forthright. Lin Xian smiled as he received the food and asked Lord Alcohol if it was poisonous. Lord Alcohol snorted and said, Xiao Xuanzi is quite cautious. Don't worry, it's not poisonous. However, that alcohol is much worse than mine. Lin Xian was relieved when he heard that it was not poisonous. He had to be careful when he was outside. He handed Tang Yu a piece of leopard meat and nodded gently. Only then did Tang Yu receive it. She opened her cherry lips and gently took a bite. She ate very quietly, not at all like the lively and active young mistress she usually was. Lin Xian also tore off a piece of meat and began to chew on it with the strong liquor. Good alcohol, Lin Xian said vaguely. Ha! Little brother, you're really straightforward. Du Ping and company laughed when they saw this. They were forthright men to begin with, so they naturally had a good impression of Lin Xian. Judging from your attire, you two should be disciples of the Black Heaven sect. Why are you in this forest? Du Ping asked. Could it be because of the recent news? Lin Xian nodded. I heard that a strange stone appeared in the demon's abyss, so I wanted to take a look. He was not lying. Almost everyone knew about this news, so there was no need to lie. What about Brother Du? Are you guys going to the demon's abyss as well? Haha, to be honest, we also want to join in the fun and see if there are any opportunities. Du Ping scratched the back of his head and said with a smile. However, this trip to the demon's abyss should be very lively. Even if we can't obtain any treasures, meeting some young experts will be worth it. The person who spoke was a youth with short hair. Oh, I wonder who the young experts are? Lin Xian's interest was piqued. We do know more about the matters of the Jianghu than disciples of sects like you, Du Ping said. Second brother, tell this little brother about it. The short-haired young man was Qin Xiu, the second in command of the bloody mercenary group. The ones heading to the Devil Abyss this time are probably all young people. Qin Xiu took a sip of wine and continued. According to the information we received, there are many forces going this time, but only a few are relatively famous. First of all, your profound sky sect's disciple, Tang Yi of the battle group, has already reached the peak of the 8th level of the meridian condensation realm. His pair of profound jade palms look down on everything, and he also has that pervasive hidden weapon. He is definitely one of the top fighting forces. When Tang Yu heard this, her eyes narrowed into crescents. She snorted proudly like a proud little fox. When Lin Xian saw Tang Yu's expression, he didn't need to think to know that Tang Yi was her brother. He smiled and tore a piece of wild boar meat for her. Next is Yisher from the Tsingyi Association. Not only is she as beautiful as a fairy, but her cultivation has also reached the 8th level of the meridian condensation realm. The jade flute in her hand is even more powerful than a treasured weapon. As for the Xinwei group, their main force seems to be carrying out a mission outside. I wonder who they will send this time? Someone on a mission? Lin Xian raised his eyebrows. If he remembered correctly, Zhang Bin's brother, Zhang Qian, was carrying out a mission outside. Thinking of this, he took a deep breath. It seemed that he had to seize the time to improve his cultivation. This Zhang Qian might come back one day, and he didn't want to be caught off guard. Qin Xiu continued. In addition to the Profound Sky sect, Xixia sect also sent experts. One of them is called Ding Hao, known as Yunzhou's Swift Blade. His blade technique is faster than lightning. The other is Lu Qing. He's a martial arts fanatic and specializes in finding experts to duel. His strength is unfathomable. The rest are small groups. For example, there are many mercenary groups like ours. Furthermore, some of the family clans in Liang City will probably send people as well. Lin Xian sighed inwardly. He didn't expect so many young experts to come. This made it even more difficult for him to steal the brown stone. As though sensing Lin Xian's thoughts, Wine God suddenly spoke up. Xiao Xuanzi, if you find another spirit root, I'll teach you a divine power. I won't go back on my word. Divine power? Lin Xian's heart raced. This is something that can only be cultivated at an extremely high realm. Are you sure it's a divine power? Lin Xian wore a look of disbelief. Didn't you say that those things of yours were of too high a level for me to learn? What's with that expression? How dare you doubt me? Back in the day, I was a supreme existence that could affect the weather of the entire continent with a sneeze. How dare you doubt me? Lord Alcohol was displeased. You can learn this divine power once you reach the 6th stage of the meridian condensation realm. I won't lie to you. Don't worry. I'll get you a stone even if I have to risk my life. Lin Xian was indeed tempted by Lord Alcohol. This was a divine power. Even if one had the strength, not everyone could cultivate it. Wealth came from danger. He didn't have much time left. The family meeting would be held in 2 years. He had to defeat the disciples of his clan. He knew that the disciples of Sword Pool Manor were even more monstrous than the disciples of the Profound Sky sect. Only by rapidly increasing his cultivation level could he return to his clan. The few of them chatted for a long time until midnight. Only then did everyone meditate and rest. A crescent moon hung in the night sky. Lin Xian didn't sleep. Instead, he silently cultivated the longevity art. After listening to so many young experts today, he felt immense pressure. Azure Qi quickly circulated in his body as a faint azure light suffused the surface of his body. Within his 4 spirit veins, spiritual energy surged like a river, bringing with it surging energy as it flowed through his body. Gradually, he seemed to become one with his surroundings. He could clearly feel everything around him, including the flowers, the trees, and the birds and beasts in the distance. This feeling was very strange. It wasn't something that a meridian condensation realm warrior could feel. The only explanation was the effect of the longevity art. Since it dared to use the word longevity, it should be extraordinary. One had to know that the most fundamental goal of a warrior's cultivation was to live forever. However, this goal was too elusive. Many people couldn't achieve it even if they tried their entire lives. However, as one's cultivation level increased, their lifespan would also increase. Under such a fatal temptation, the practice of martial arts in the Lingwu continent became the norm. Once one entered the Spirit Sea realm and became a spirit master, their lifespan would increase by 200 years. This was double the lifespan of an ordinary person. How could those warriors not go crazy? Furthermore, the higher one's cultivation level, the higher one's status and the greater one's authority. High-level cultivators could easily control the lives of low-level cultivators. This survival of the fittest stimulated everyone to cultivate with all their might. There's a spiritual energy fluctuation ahead. Lin Xian sensed a change ahead and exited his cultivation state. He opened his eyes and cautiously looked around. Whoosh! A black arrow suddenly shot out from the forest, leaving a black trail in the air as it headed straight for Du Ping of the Blood Mercenary Group. Chapter 32. In the dark night, The surroundings were silent. Only the crackling of the bonfire beside Lin Xian could be heard. The black arrow flew silently in the air, as if it was the call of the Grim Reaper. Clang! In the nick of time, Lin Xian swung his sword and knocked the black dagger away. This action immediately woke up the blood-red mercenary group. Du Ping and the rest picked up their weapons and looked around vigilantly. Tang Yu also had a cold expression on her face, but her clear eyes were shining. "Brother Lin, what's going on?" Du Ping asked. "I don't know, but that arrow was shot at you," Lin Xian said in a deep voice. "Me?" Du Ping was stunned. In the next moment, when he saw the black arrow stuck in the tree trunk, his face turned black. "Viper mercenary group!" Du Ping took a deep breath. "What? Those bastards actually chased us here!" The other mercenaries shouted. Brother Lin, this time we dragged you into this," Du Ping said with guilt. "Don't worry, even if I have to risk my life, I will protect you. How strong are they?" Lin Xian was very concerned about this question. At this time, arguing was useless. Only by working together could they survive. "Their strength is about the same as ours. I wonder how many of them came?" Du Ping said. Whoosh! Whoosh! Another few black arrows flew from different directions. Lin Xian and the rest covered their bodies and gradually retreated together. "They have surrounded this place," Lin Xian said calmly. Behind them was a mountain wall, and in front of them was an unknown enemy. Just as they were talking, another round of arrows flew by. F***CK! Du Ping and the rest were suppressed by the arrows and could only say, "Bastards of the Viper group, come out if you dare. Grandpa will definitely beat you up." "Hee, you can say that to the King of Hell!" A cold voice came from the darkness. Whoosh! Before the voice finished, Tang Yu waved her hand and 3 silver needles flashed with cold light and flew into the darkness, followed by a groan. "Everyone be careful, there's a hidden weapon expert on the other side," the person on the other side reminded. Lin Xian was taken aback. He never knew that Tang Yu knew how to use hidden weapons. He looked at her in surprise. "Humph!" Tang Yu proudly raised her chin, then rolled her eyes at Lin Xian. "Oh, it's actually a beauty." In the darkness, the cold voice sounded again. "I didn't expect that there would be such a beauty in this deep forest. It seems that the heavens are treating me well." So. Tang Yu's small face was cold as she shot out a few more silver needles. However, this time, the mysterious person dodged all of them. "Humph, cowardly scoundrel, come out if you have the guts," Tang Yu said angrily after missing his target. "Since the beauty has a request, this young master will come out." The voice was full of ridicule. During this time, Lin Xian and the others did not act rashly. They were still cautiously watching their surroundings to prevent being injured by hidden arrows. Sure enough, not long after, a group of people walked out of the darkness. These people were wearing silver armor with a ferocious snake painted on their chest. It was extremely frightening. One of them was a youth in his 20s with a saber hanging from his waist. At this moment, he was staring at Tang Yu with a pair of eyes full of evil. "What a peerless beauty! In a moment this young master will properly entertain you," the youth with the saber said with an evil smile. "Pay! Shameless!" Tang Yu's face was disgusted. "It really is you bunch of scum!" Du Ping saw the youth with the saber and immediately roared. "I shouldn't have let you go at that time. This young master does not need you to care about what he does. Isn't it just killing a few people and playing with a few women? What are you getting so worked up for?" the youth said disdainfully. "You dare to offend me? Today you are dead!" The youth with the saber was very arrogant. He was right. Du Ping's side had a total of 7 people. Du Ping was at the 6th level of the meridian condensing period, and the others were at the 5th level. Moreover, he saw a 4th level meridian condensing period youth. On his side there were 2 6th level meridian condensing period people, and more than 10 5th level meridian condensing period people. Killing them would be as easy as flipping a hand. "Humph, A 4th-level meridian condensing period brat dares to come deep into the mountains. What an idiot! The youth said disdainfully. Lin Xian was immediately unhappy. You dare to look down on me? I will teach you a lesson later. I advise you to obediently stop. After this young master has enjoyed this little beauty, I might be in a good mood and let you go. F***CKU. Du Ping was already anxious. They were all hot-blooded men. How could they be bullied? The 5 people of the bloody mercenary group immediately rushed up. Tang Yu on the side also shot out another hidden weapon. This time, she did not sneak attack the youth with the saber, but attacked the ordinary mercenaries. Sure enough, a moment later there was a muffled groan. Go! The youth with the saber waved his hand and the mercenaries behind him immediately rushed up. There was a violent fluctuation of spiritual energy in the air. Du Ping and a middle-aged man were fighting. Both of them were 6th-level meridian condensing period cultivators. Their moves were swift and fierce. Use your hidden weapons to hurt them, Lin Xian quickly said as he dealt with a mercenary who rushed up with a sword. Okay. Tang Yu moved quickly. The silver needles in her hand were terrifying. Every time she used them, they would definitely hurt people. The bloody mercenary group was originally under a lot of pressure, but with the help of Tang Yu's hidden weapons, they quickly stabilized the situation. In addition to Lin Xian's abnormal attacks, the two sides were tied. Humph, a bit interesting. The youth with the saber laughed evilly and pulled out the long saber at his waist. Little beauty, this young master will play with you. The youth thought that Tang Yu was the biggest threat, so he planned to personally stop Tang Yu. Whoa! The saber suddenly turned into a white light and rushed towards Tang Yu. Tang Yu quickly moved and barely avoided the attack. However, the youth was a 6th-level meridian condensing period cultivator. The dazzling saber gave her a lot of pressure. Lin Xian did not immediately go forward. He was still fighting with the 5th-level meridian condensing period cultivator. He was waiting for a chance to kill with one strike. The 2 6th-level cultivators gave them too much pressure. They had to get rid of one of them first. Tang Yu used the clear wind sword art to fight with the youth. The slender blue long sword was like a gust of wind. Every strike was like an antelope's horn, untraceable. Relying on the exquisite sword art, Tang Yu temporarily stabilized her footsteps. Hee hee, little beauty, your sword art is not bad. The youth had a lewd smile. He blocked Tang Yu's attacks while teasing her. I am the young leader of the poisonous snake mercenary group. Why don't you follow me? I guarantee you will eat and drink well every day. Shameless! Tang Yu was very angry. She could not help but increase her spiritual energy. The long sword in her hand was as bright as a waterfall, constantly emitting sounds. Lin Xian, you bastard, why aren't you coming over to help? Tang Yu shouted angrily. Lin Xian? That 4th-level meridian condensing period trash? The youth was stunned. He turned to look at Lin Xian. Just a trash. This young master is much stronger than him. Fine, let me cut off his head. Then you will know how powerful this young master is. The youth laughed evilly and pounced towards Lin Xian. In his opinion, this Lin Xian must be Tang Yu's lover. Only by killing Lin Xian can he make Tang Yu obediently submit. Chapter 33. The youth laughed evilly. The long blade in his hand was like a rainbow, bursting with a brilliant light. It cut through the darkness and slashed towards Lin Xian. This was a strike from a rank 6 meridian stage martial artist. His spiritual energy surged and wrapped around the blade, forming a materialized blade aura. Die! The youth's face was ferocious. Bastard, be careful! Tang Yu was too late to stop him. She could only use all her strength to remind Lin Xian. The members of the blood-red mercenary group saw this scene and revealed a tragic expression. Du Ping roared and shook off the rank 6 spiritual knight that was fighting him. Brother Lin, get out of the way! Humph, how can a rank 4 meridian stage brat dodge? Young leader is a genuine rank 6 spiritual knight. Du Ping, you are too naive. The next to die will be your blood-red mercenary group. The materialized blade aura instantly arrived in front of Lin Xian. The violent force made one's skin hurt. In the dark night, Lin Xian was unusually calm. He used the shadow step and his body was like a ghost. He moved horizontally by 1 meter and dodged the ferocious strike. Boom! The place where Lin Xian was originally standing had a crack. The entire ground caved in. The strike from a rank 6 Meridian stage martial artist was indeed terrifying. He dodged? The youth was slightly surprised. Interesting. Brat, your Qigong is not bad. I wonder if you can dodge my second strike? The youth laughed like a cat playing with a mouse. The blade aura once again condensed into a materialized blade aura. The youth held the blade with one hand and aimed at Lin Xian. Whoosh! 3 silver needles as thin as a cow's hair flew out and aimed at the back of the youth's head. Humph! The youth snorted and turned around. A bright spiritual energy wrapped around his hand and he caught the 3 silver needles in his hand. The young man's lips curled into a sinister smile as he looked at Tang Yu wickedly. Little beauty, I'll let you have your fill in a moment. Lin Xian saw the youth turn around and his eyes lit up. Now is the time. He gathered all his strength on the tip of his sword and soared. Like a meteor, he flew across the dark sky. Flying star! A flash of light seemed to tear the void apart, illuminating the boundless darkness. There was still an evil smile on the young man's face. The wildness in his eyes was gradually replaced by fear. He raised his hand with difficulty. He wanted to say something, but he could only make a trickling sound. His entire body twitched as he clutched his throat with all his might. However, blood continued to flow out. You! The young man couldn't believe that he would die at the hands of a rank 4 pulse condensation cultivator. Plop! The young man's body fell to the ground, blood instantly staining the ground red. Tang Yu's cherry lips were agape as she stared blankly at Lin Xian. After a long while, she blushed and whispered, "Too handsome! Young regiment commander is dead!" A cry of alarm rang out in the night, echoing in the forest. What? This is impossible! Every member of the Viper mercenary group cried out involuntarily. The young leader was a 6th rank spiritual knight. Who could kill him? However, the corpses on the ground were so eye-catching that they had no choice but to accept this fact. At this moment, the battle had already entered a white-hot stage. Both sides had suffered injuries. However, the young man's death still caused the members of the Viper mercenary group to panic. Du Ping and the rest were deeply shocked. Lin Xian's move was too fast. It was so fast that they couldn't react in time. Brother Lin, good job! Du Ping's body was covered in blood, but his eyes flickered with excitement. With the young man dead, they would be saved. Boom! That bearded man and Du Ping exchanged a punch, then quickly rushed to the side of the young man's corpse. You actually killed the young regiment commander. We, the Viper mercenary group, will not let you off. The bearded man's face was sinister. Now that the young regiment commander was dead, he would be severely punished when he returned. The head commander would go crazy. 3rd Regiment Commander, what should we do? The members of the Viper mercenary group surrounded him. Oh, whoa! The sound of the battle had already alarmed the nearby wild beasts. Now that the smell of blood permeated the air, it stimulated the wild beasts even more. Pairs of dark green eyes lit up in the surroundings, as if balls of will-o'-the-wisps were floating around. Damn it, it's the dark demonic wolves! Du Ping supported his injured brother with a face full of anxiety. The members of the Viper mercenary group also had faces full of fear, as if they had encountered something terrifying. Brother Lin, don't bother about these people. Let's break out of the encirclement. These dark demonic wolves are bloodthirsty by nature. They are stimulated by fresh blood and will go crazy. Moreover, they appear in packs. Normal cultivators won't be able to handle them, Du Ping said as he carried the luggage on his back. He waved at Lin Xian and said, Brother Lin, let's break out of here together. Humph! We, the Viper mercenary group, We'll remember what happened today. The 3rd Regiment commander gritted his teeth and glared at Lin Xian. He ignored the corpse on the ground. 3rd Regiment commander, the young regiment commander's corpse, shut up! Now that we're surrounded by the dark demonic wolves, it's not certain if we can make it out alive. You're still carrying a corpse. Everyone, raise your spirits and break out of here! The 3rd Regiment commander shouted and charged in a direction. Brother Lin, let's go! Du Ping urged. Lin Xian glanced at the members of the Viper mercenary group. Since he had killed their young regiment commander, he had no intention of letting these people go. He didn't want to be hunted down in the future. However, the appearance of the dark demonic wolves forced him to retreat. Let's go! Lin Xian pulled Tang Yu and followed closely behind the members of the bloody mercenary group, preparing to break out of the encirclement. Whoosh! When Lin Xian and the rest moved, the dark demonic wolves also moved. Hundreds of black demonic wolves bared their fangs and pounced on the corpses on the ground. However, most of them chased after Lin Xian and the rest. Pff. Pff. The long sword in Lin Xian's hand had completely turned into a blood sword. Every time he swung his sword, a dark demonic wolf would fall. The other members of the bloody mercenary group were shocked. They didn't expect a rank 4 psychic to be so powerful. On the other hand, the members of the Viper mercenary group were screaming miserably as they constantly fell. It would be good if a third of them could make it out alive. Lin Xian quickly opened up a path. The long sword in his hand turned into lightning, releasing an endless amount of energy. After running for a long time, they finally shook off the dark demonic wolves. It's all thanks to Brother Lin this time. Du Ping wiped the cold sweat off his face. If you need our help in the future, Brother Lin, feel free to ask. Brother Du, you're too polite. Lin Xian smiled. The cold look from before had completely disappeared. Let's find a place to spend the rest of the night. It's almost daybreak. If everyone stays together, we should be able to get through it. Du Fan looked around and said. The 7 of them found a clean place to rest until the sun appeared in the east. Early in the morning, Lin Xian and Tang Yu parted ways with the bloody mercenary group. The 2 of them quickly headed towards the Devil's Abyss and finally reached the periphery by noon. At this moment, there were already a few figures appearing in the vicinity. Lin Xian even saw the disciples of the Black Heaven sect. You go and meet up with them. Lin Xian pointed at the people in front of him and said with a smile. What about you? Tang Yu curled her lips. I still have some other matters to attend to. Lin Xian placed his hands behind his head. I'm going to look for opportunities. As for you, wait for your brother obediently. Lin Xian waved his hand and quickly disappeared into the forest. Little bastard, you always run so fast. Tang Yu stomped her feet in anger. In a corner at the periphery of the Devil's Abyss, a group of people in silver light armor were gathered together. In the middle was a bald man. He sat there arrogantly and cursed. Why aren't third brother and the rest here yet? Damn it, are they born in the year of the turtle? Chapter 34. The bald man's face was filled with impatience. He said to his underlings, Let's wait for another hour. If Old Third and the rest still don't come, we will make a move first. Just as he finished speaking, one of his underlings hurriedly ran over. Second master, it's not good. What's wrong? The bald man glared and said slowly, Look at you, you have wasted your time following me for so long. That underling's chin was trembling. He said intermittently, Third master is back, young commander, what happened to him? Did he cause trouble again? Damn it, it's all because Big Brother spoiled him. The bald man said angrily. He's dead. The underling finally finished his sentence, and then he collapsed. Boom! The bald man suddenly stood up. The spiritual light on his body was like a burning flame. He grabbed that underling and asked sternly, Damn it, what did you say? Young commander is dead? You dare to make such a joke with me, you brat, don't want to live anymore. That underling was held tightly by a pair of big hands. His eyes rolled back and he was about to faint. At this moment, a middle-aged man with a full beard walked over with a tired face. "Second brother, let him go. He didn't lie." The middle-aged man sighed. When the bald man heard this, his body trembled. He loosened his grip and the underling who was floating in midair fell down. "Old third, what happened? Jixing is a 6th-level spiritual knight. Including you, there are 2 6th-level spiritual knights in the group. What kind of enemy could kill him? Could it be that he met a young expert?" "Second brother, it's like this." The middle-aged man told the story. When the bald man heard that the young commander was killed by a 4th-level spiritual knight, his face was filled with disbelief. "What? 4th-level spiritual knight? Are you sure it's a 4th-level spiritual knight?" The bald man did not believe it. "That's right. He is an outer disciple of the Black Sky sect, a 4th-level spiritual knight," the bearded man said. "That brat seems to know a sword technique. It's very powerful. Jixing was careless and fell into his hands. Damn it, we must catch that brat. Avenge Jixing." The bald man's face was ferocious. "Little ones, search for him. We must find that brat. Second brother, the other party is from the Black Sky sect. There are many of their experts nearby. We should be careful." The bald man nodded. "Find him first, but don't attack him. Then report to us as soon as possible. Anyone who can provide accurate information will be rewarded with 1,000 low-grade spirit stones." 1,000! The mercenaries' eyes suddenly lit up. This was equivalent to several years of their income. What was the point of being a mercenary? Wasn't it to earn some money and live a good life? Now, a piece of information could be exchanged for 1,000 spirit stones. This was simply a pie falling from the sky. At that moment, the members of the Viper mercenary group moved out one after another, searching according to the clues provided by the third leader. After Lin Xian and Tang Yu parted ways, Lin Xian went to the periphery of the demon abyss alone to investigate the situation. This allowed him to discover many people from other powers, but he didn't alarm them. Instead, he quietly circled around them. "Uncle Drunkard, give me some pointers." Lin Xian didn't want to continue searching aimlessly. "Didn't you say that there was an opportunity for me here? Where is it?" "TSK, why would I lie to you?" Lord Alcohol shouted. "But those people are a little strange. They seem to be waiting for something. Why don't you go and ask them?" Lin Xian's face darkened. "Ask them? Ask your sister. Do you think they'll tell you?" Hee, young lad, you're too impatient. They're waiting, and so are we. We'll wait and see, understand?" Lord Alcohol lectured. Lin Xian gnashed his teeth in hatred. He jumped onto a big tree and secretly observed those people. These people were divided into 8 or 9 groups, each occupying a different position. Among them were disciples of the Black Sky sect and people of the Zixia sect. "Will there really be stones spewing out later?" someone asked. The person who asked the question was a disciple of the Black Sky sect's Godly Might group. He looked into the depths of the mountain forest with a puzzled expression. "Yes, there will be stones spewing out in the next few days, but most of them don't have anything inside. We can only try our best to collect as many stones as possible to avoid missing out on treasures. Be careful in a while. Although the inner sect disciples are waiting for an opportunity in another place, we can't let our guard down. This time, other than our Divine Might group's genius disciples, other factions have also sent young geniuses. It can be said that all of the 4 heroes of the outer sect have come." At this point, many people looked at a figure not far away. It was a handsome youth who was sitting cross-legged on a large rock, resting with his eyes closed. He was the Divine Might group's young genius, Jiang Yulong. He was only 16 years old, but his cultivation had reached the 6th stage of the Meridian Condensing stage. He was one of the strongest in the Divine Might group's outer sect, and was also in the top 5 of the outer sect rankings. The 4 heroes of the outer sect referred to the 4 genius youths. They were as dazzling as comets, suppressing the other outer sect disciples to the point that they couldn't raise their heads. The outer sect rankings was based on the inner sect rankings, and its purpose was to rank the strength of the outer sect disciples. The outer sect rankings only recorded the top 500 disciples. Many outer sect disciples were already on the rankings. After all, there were several tens of thousands of outer sect disciples. To be able to enter the top 500 was enough to prove one's strength. People like Yan Kong, Hua Yangping, and the others were ranked very high. Even Liang Hong and Xing Lifeng, whom Lin Xian had defeated, were also in the top 500. Although many people were at the 6th stage of the meridian condensing stage, the difference in strength was very large. Aside from experience, the most important factor was the realm of martial arts. If there were 2 6th-stage spiritual knights, and one of them practiced a high-grade yellow-level martial art to large success, and the other was at the foundation realm, then the difference between the two would be very large. For example, the young leader of the poisonous snake group who had died. Although his saber skills were swift and fierce, in reality, he hadn't even reached the small success realm. This was also the reason why Lin Xian could easily kill him. The disciples of the Divine Might group looked at Jiang Yulong with eyes full of worship. Some of the young girls were even infatuated with him, but Jiang Yulong didn't even open his eyes. However, this didn't affect everyone's worship of him. It could be seen how important the 4 heroes were in everyone's hearts. Suddenly, a black cloud rose from the depths of the forest. It was rolling like black ink, eerie and terrifying. Immediately after, 3 black shadows flew out. Each of them was the size of a watermelon. "It's out!" It was unknown who shouted in the crowd. Everyone looked towards the sky. Even Jiang Yulong opened his eyes and stared at the flying stone. His eyes revealed a trace of passion. Many people held their weapons, ready to attack at any time. At the same time, they secretly called for their own people to prevent others from destroying it. The 3 stones flew in 3 different directions. One of them was flying towards the direction of the Divine Might group. The disciples of the Divine Might group were overjoyed and cheered happily. Jiang Yulong stood upright. His palm emitted a faint light as he prepared to receive the stone. "Senior brother Jiang is indeed powerful. Even the mysterious heaven stone was attracted," a disciple of the Divine Might group said. "That's right. Senior brother Jiang is also a genius. Even the heavens will favor him." The group of disciples were chattering, discussing how mighty senior brother Jiang was. At this moment, the stone was flying at extreme speed and was about to fall. Jiang Yulong's handsome face revealed a trace of a smile. He stretched out his hand and was about to grab the mysterious stone. However, just as he stretched out his hand, there was a sudden change. That mysterious brown stone suddenly paused. Then, it suddenly accelerated and flew towards Jiang Yulong's back. Chapter 35. Jiang Yulong was originally brimming with confidence. He had an insufferably arrogant smile as he prepared to receive the mysterious brown stone. However, he never expected the duck to suddenly fly away. The stone drew an arc in the air and avoided Jiang Yulong as it flew backward. The Divine Might group disciples were also at a loss. They had just praised senior brother Jiang for being blessed by the heavens, but in the blink of an eye, the treasure that flew over had escaped. So, the watermelon-sized stone drilled into the forest and stopped moving. Just as everyone was puzzled, a figure tore out of the forest and quickly fled into the distance. Moments later, the Divine Might group erupted into curses. F***K, the stone has been stolen. Chase after it. That person must have used demonic arts to change the direction of the stone. Find him and break his limbs. Let him know the prowess of our Divine Might group. The eyes of the group of disciples were burning with rage as they chased after the figure. Jiang Yulong sneered and turned into an afterimage as he quickly chased after the figure. Phew! Phew! Lin Xian used all his spiritual energy and ran into the forest. He and Lord Alcohol had used the suction force of Devour to successfully pull the brown stone over. This resulted in the stone changing direction in front of Jiang Yulong. F***K, this is too exciting. Lin Xian's heart pounded. It felt great to snatch a stone from under the noses of so many people. Furthermore, it was a stone from the Divine Might group. Lord Alcohol, what's inside? Lin Xian asked. I can't tell. There's a layer of mysterious energy on the surface of the stone that prevents me from probing it. I can only know what it is after cutting it open. It's different from the last time? Lin Xian was surprised. Even Lord Alcohol couldn't see through it? Perhaps the stone has been tainted with the demonic nature of the demon abyss. However, that's not important. Why don't you cut it open and take a look? Lord Alcohol wore a look of anticipation. I don't have much good wine left. I really hope it's a 10,000-year-old spiritual wood. Just as Lord Alcohol said that, he suddenly frowned. Xiao Xuanzi, let's go. Someone is following us. Damn, so fast? Lin Xian was shocked. He was already running as fast as he could, but the other party still caught up to him. He couldn't help but be shocked. With this kind of speed, the person chasing after him must be an expert. It probably wasn't someone as easy to deal with as the young commander. Lin Xian was anxious. With a flash of his body, he changed his direction again. However, the sense of danger behind him did not lessen. It was still like a sharp sword hanging over his head. Chi! Suddenly, the sound of something tearing through the air rang out behind Lin Xian, followed by a resplendent sword ray. Boom! Lin Xian stepped on the tree trunk and moved his body horizontally, narrowly avoiding the sword light. What a terrifying sword! Lin Xian's heart palpitated. Not only was this sword rich in spiritual energy, but it also carried a kind of aura, as if it could cut through everything. Is this sword force? It's really amazing! Lin Xian was no stranger to sword force. His heaven's falling stars had a kind of sword force, but he couldn't use it casually. Humph! You can actually dodge it? You do have some skills, but that's all. A disdainful voice came from the front. Be obedient and hand over the stone. I'll give you a quick death. Otherwise, you'll regret being born into this world. Lin Xian looked at this figure vigilantly. This was a handsome young man. He seemed to have a natural sense of superiority, and didn't put anyone in his eyes. However, he did have the capital to be arrogant. The flame-like spiritual energy on his body showed his cultivation as a rank 6 meridian stage 6. In addition to the sword just now, this young man was much stronger than the average rank 6 spiritual knight. Don't resist. You won't even have the chance to attack. Hand over the brown stone and I'll let you go, Jiang Yulong ordered. He originally wanted to kill Lin Xian immediately, but he didn't find any trace of the stone. That's why he threatened you. Seeing that you're also a disciple of the Black Sky sect, you must have heard of the 4 heroes of the outer sect. Don't worry, as long as you tell me where the brown stone is hidden, I'll guarantee your safety. Lin Xian secretly sighed in relief. He knew that Jiang Yulong was trying to trick him. Luckily, he handed over the brown stone. Otherwise, the other party would have already made a move. However, what shocked him was that the other party was actually one of the 4 heroes of the outer sect. This was definitely a demonic existence. If you want the stone, follow me. Lin Xian had no choice but to stall for time. He used Shadow Step and ran in a direction. Behind him, Jiang Yulong sneered and followed him unhurriedly. Lord Alcohol, quickly cut open that stone. Lin Xian urged Jiang Yulong in his heart. If Jiang Yulong managed to obtain some divine weapon, he might be able to fight it out with him. You better not play any tricks. I know your route. If you take a wrong step, I'll cut off one of your arms. Jiang Yulong's voice was as cold as the Grim Reaper. F***K. Lin Xian was infuriated. He originally wanted to fool him, but he never expected Jiang Yulong to be so shrewd. Due to Jiang Yulong's pressure from behind, Lin Xian had no choice but to speed up. He secretly walked back along his original route and saw a group of people rushing over. Lin Xian recognized them as members of the Divine Might group. Oh no! Lin Xian saw Xing Lifeng and company. These people knew his identity and would definitely not let him off. He could not help but grip the sword at his waist tightly. Xiao Xuanzi, I've cut it out. It's a talisman, said Lord Alcohol. Talisman? What's it used for? Is it an offensive type? Lin Xian asked in delight. The so-called talisman was a special technique used by rim masters to seal energy into a piece of paper so that it could be used in times of danger. These talisman papers were abnormally powerful and could be said to have endless uses. In fact, he had long wanted to make a few, but they were too expensive and he couldn't afford them. It's not an offensive type, said Lord Alcohol. It's a wind escape talisman. Escape talisman! Lin Xian was nearly overjoyed. He needed it too much. It was definitely a useful tool to escape from adversity. However, this talisman paper is incomplete. It's only half of it. Just as Lin Xian was secretly rejoicing, Lord Alcohol splashed a bucket of cold water on him. Lin Xian was too deep for tears. After all this time, it was only a half-broken talisman paper. His luck was way too bad. At that moment, the Divine Might group members came in front of him. They were alarmed when they saw Lin Xian. It's you! You know him? Jiang Yilong frowned. Senior brother Jiang, this punk is the one who went against our Divine Might group. He was the one who killed Zhang Bin. Someone said. Punk, you are too arrogant. You actually dared to snatch our senior brother Jiang's divine stone. You are courting death. Senior brother Jiang is mighty. He subdued this punk the moment he made a move. Jiang Yilong frowned as he looked at Lin Xian. Suddenly he said in a deep voice, Shut up. The stone is still in his hands. What? The Divine Might group members were taken aback before they glared at Lin Xian. Punk, quickly hand over the divine stone. You want the stone? Sure, but let me think about it first, Lin Xian said with a grin. However, you are not allowed to make a fuss in front of me. If I were to forget where I placed the stone, it would be none of my business. Punk, you are courting death. The Divine Might group members were enraged as they wished they could immediately pounce on him. All of you, shut up! Jiang Yilong looked at Lin Xian's tiny face and suddenly had an ominous premonition. Chapter 36. All the disciples of the Divine Might group were shocked. They didn't expect Jiang Yilong to have such a big reaction. I'll give you one last chance. Say it and live. Otherwise, die. Jiang Yilong pointed his sword at Lin Xian. Lin Xian squinted his eyes and had a lazy smile on his face. However, he was asking Lord Alcohol in his heart. Is what you said true? That's right, Xiao Xuanzi. I said you were young, but you didn't believe me. You can't even finish listening. Lord Alcohol lectured. Although this wind escape talisman is broken, it can still be used once more. Your life is saved. Uncle Drunkard, wait for me to exchange a move with him before you use the wind escape talisman, Lin Xian said. Oh, you want to make a move? Lord Alcohol was stunned. Hee hee, Xiao Xuanzi, I'm not trying to put you down, but you are 2 realms apart. Be careful not to be killed in an instant. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Start preparing. Under Jiang Yilong's gaze, Lin Xian didn't have a trace of fear. He smiled and said, I've long heard of the 4 heroes of the outer sect. I wonder if they are the same as the rumors? Why don't we exchange a few moves? Jiang Yilong frowned. He couldn't understand where a rank 4 spiritual knight got his confidence from. Brat, you're courting death. How dare you speak to senior brother Jiang like that? Finally, the disciples of the Divine Might group couldn't hold it in anymore. That's right. Don't you know who you are? How dare you challenge the 4 heroes of the outer sect? Don't forget that your life is still in our hands. Lin Xian didn't care about these people. Instead, he drew out his steel sword. He knew that he only had one chance to make a move, so he had to use his strongest move. He couldn't use the extraterrestrial flying star as it was his life-saving trump card. The only move he could use was the first sword technique of the thunderous sword art, 13 swords as one. In an instant, Lin Xian raised his cultivation to its strongest state. All the energy in his body was concentrated on this sword. A cold light flashed as the sword slashed across. There wasn't any earth-shattering sound, not even a ray of light. This sword was so fast that the rest of the Divine Might group's disciples couldn't even see the sword's trajectory. Jiang Yulong did not expect that Lin Xian would actually dare to make a move. Moreover, this sword technique was beyond his expectations. "I'll let you know what a genius is and what the gap between us is." Jiang Yulong had an evil smile on his face. The long sword in his hand shot out like a swimming dragon with a shocking aura. Clang clang! The two swords clashed, emitting a dazzling light. Lin Xian's attack didn't injure Jiang Yulong. After all, the difference between the two was too great. However, this strike still managed to change the direction of his opponent's sword. The long sword that was originally aimed at Lin Xian changed direction and brushed past him. "This is the strength of the four heroes of the outer sect?" Lin Xian was not disappointed at all. He was not worse than anyone else. The only thing he lacked was time. One must know that he had only cultivated for 3 months. Boom! Wherever the sword light passed, everything was reduced to ashes. However, there was a trace of anger on Jiang Yulong's face. His sword had been shaken by his opponent. This was a humiliation to him. Humph! Jiang Yulong snorted coldly. His long sword danced again. The materialized sword light was breathtaking as it charged towards Lin Xian with a violent energy. "Haha, the four heroes of the outer sect are only SOSO. The next time we meet, I'll use the sword in my hand to defeat you." Lin Xian laughed loudly. A gust of wind surged around him. "I've given the brown stone to the Viper mercenary group. I hope you're not too late." The gust of wind wrapped around Lin Xian and swept him into the distance. Whoosh! Jiang Yulong's longsword slashed down, but it only cut through the air. Lin Xian's laughter still echoed in the forest, lingering for a long time. Jiang Yulong's face was cold. A disciple that was as insignificant as an ant had actually toyed with him and left. This kind of thing had never happened to him before. "Brat, the next time we meet, I'll definitely kill you with my sword." Jiang Yulong already had the intention to kill. The surrounding Xinwei group's disciples looked at each other, not daring to say a word. Lin Xian's actions had once again given them a resounding slap in the face. "What are you all in a daze for? Hurry up and find the Viper mercenary group," Jiang Yulong said solemnly. "That Lin Xian." The Xinwei group's disciples wanted to say something, but when they saw Jiang Yulong's face that was colder than an iceberg, they could only swallow their words. "All of you follow me. Do your best to search for the Viper mercenary group. Once you find them, immediately report back." The Xinwei group's disciples immediately split into countless small groups and entered the forest. Lin Xian was wrapped in the gust of wind, so he couldn't see the scenery outside. However, he could feel himself flying. "This feeling is so magical!" Lin Xian couldn't help but exclaim. "When you reach the spirit transformation realm, you will be able to fly with your own strength," Lord Alcohol said. "I will definitely reach the spirit transformation realm." Lin Xian's eyes were filled with determination. Above the meridian condensation realm was the spirit sea realm. At this realm, one could release their spirit energy out of their body and kill people thousands of miles away. After the spirit sea realm was the spirit transformation realm. At this realm, cultivators could break free from the shackles of their bodies and achieve flight. Just as Lin Xian was fantasizing about the future, the gust of wind around him gradually weakened and finally disappeared. Lin Xian safely reached the ground. Lin Xian steadied himself and looked around. Immediately, his face turned extremely ugly, eerie and cold. This was what Lin Xian felt the most. He looked around warily. There were trees and vines growing around him, and most of them were grayish-black in color. What was even stranger was that there wasn't a single sound around. Yes, other than Lin Xian's heartbeat, there was no other sound. "What the hell is this place?" Lin Xian felt his scalp tingle. "Don't tell me I'm in the demon abyss?" "Sigh, Xiao Xuanzi, you really jinxed it," Lord Alcohol said leisurely. "What? It's really the demon abyss!" Lin Xian exclaimed. "It's over. I just escaped from the jaws of a tiger, and now I'm in danger. I've been really unlucky recently." Lin Xian's face fell. Suddenly, his expression changed. That's not right. Didn't they say that anyone who approached the demon abyss would die? Why am I fine? Could it be that this isn't the demon abyss? With this in mind, Lin Xian suddenly rejoiced. This is indeed the demon abyss, but you are inside it. Lord Alcohol sighed and dampened his enthusiasm. Inside the demon abyss? Lin Xian took a deep breath. No one has ever been able to enter the demon abyss. I want to see what's so special about it. Uncle, are there any restrictions here? Lin Xian asked cautiously. No. Don't worry and just leave. If I'm not wrong, this is also the periphery. Lord Alcohol concluded after observing for a while. With his sword in hand, Lin Xian stepped over some vines and carefully walked in. Gradually, there were fewer and fewer trees. Instead, they were replaced by ice-cold stone tablets that stood upright like trees. Most of these stone monuments were dilapidated, as though they had experienced countless years. The moment he approached, Lin Xian felt a sense of vicissitudes. Sigh! Lord Alcohol sighed when he saw these stone monuments. His voice was filled with helplessness. Lin Xian didn't know why Lord Alcohol was sighing. He walked forward and gently touched the surface of the monument. Suddenly, he exclaimed softly as though he had discovered something. Chapter 37. These stone monuments had runic patterns engraved on them, but the marks were very faint. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be discovered. This is... Lin Xian looked carefully but realized that he didn't recognize the runes at all. This should be ancient text. It shouldn't be common nowadays, right? Lord Alcohol suddenly said. Uncle Drunkard, you can recognize ancient text? Lin Xian was alarmed. Don't tell me you're from ancient times? Lord Alcohol didn't answer Lin Xian's question. Instead, he said in a deep voice, the text is just a means. The true essence is the psyche. Carefully comprehend it. Upon hearing Lord Alcohol's words, Lin Xian wiped the smile off his face as he seriously tried to comprehend the information left behind on the stone monument. Suddenly, a ghastly coldness emanated from the stone monument and permeated the world. Lin Xian felt as if his soul was trembling, as if he were a puny ant kneeling before a supreme king. The next moment, the surrounding scenery changed drastically. There was an endless sea of blood and mountains of corpses, dragon bones that were 10,000 feet long, human skeletons that were 1,000 feet long, and a giant that roared at the sky. It was as though he had arrived in ancient times. Phew! Lin Xian's body trembled as he retreated with a pale face. An illusion. It must be an illusion. Cold sweat trickled down his forehead. What did you see? Lord Alcohol asked. An endless sea of blood and a sea of white bones. Lin Xian felt a lingering fear. Sigh, no matter how many divine powers you have, you are ultimately just a pile of white bones. Lord Alcohol was somewhat sad. These should be supreme existences. Why are they all dead? Lin Xian was puzzled. Inside the mysterious sword, Lord Alcohol sat lazily under a withered tree. He held a red wine gourd in his hand as his black hair fluttered in the wind. He looked like an immortal, but his eyes were filled with vicissitudes. Who in this world can live forever? It's just self-deception. Lord Alcohol's voice sounded a little lonely. Lin Xian moved his body and changed to another stone monument. He placed his hand on it again. This time, there were no illusions. Unwilling to give up, he continued to touch the stone steels. Finally, when he reached the seventh one, he once again felt an ancient aura. A figure as tall as a fiend god, whose face could not be seen clearly, was fighting with a group of demons with wings on their backs and horns on their heads. These fiends held blood-colored spears in their hands, stirring up the wind and clouds as they swarmed towards the fiend god-like man. The man only swung his sword once, and the entire void seemed to be cut apart, shattering into countless pieces. All the demons were cut in half by the sword. Whoosh! Lin Xian withdrew from the illusory realm and remained silent. The sword he saw just now was too shocking. He felt that it was the true sword Tao. He felt that there was something special in that sword, but he didn't know what it was. This sword intent. Inside the mysterious sword, Lord Alcohol revealed a look of astonishment. Xiao Xuanzi, you have triggered the stone monument again. Remember, relax your mind and don't resist. Lin Xian did as he was told. The next moment, he felt a boom in his head as his surroundings changed drastically. Countless terrifying cracks crisscrossed the land that was filled with the vicissitudes of life. The sky was like broken glass. Black cracks appeared in the sky, and behind them was endless darkness. Thousands of fiends were sliced apart at the waist. Four mysterious black-armored men appeared in all directions as they slowly walked towards the tall man in the middle. The four of them were too terrifying. Every step they took left a black hole in the void. Finally, the entire sky collapsed. As for the tall man, he remained standing proudly as light pulsed from his body like an invincible immortal king. Yes, he was invincible. The tall man only swung his sword once again. He didn't take the four terrifying mysterious men seriously at all. With a single swing of his sword, everything in the world turned blurry. Lin Xian kept retreating as though he couldn't withstand the sword intent. Inside the mysterious sword, Lord Alcohol wore a solemn expression. The stars in his eyes flickered as he constantly simulated the sword strike from before. After a long while, everything returned to normal. Lin Xian regained his clarity of mind. Although he hadn't broken through, he felt that his strength had increased significantly. It was a mysterious feeling that was difficult to describe with words. Is this sword intent? Lin Xian couldn't think of a word to describe it. That's right. It's sword intent. Lord Alcohol returned to his former self. Xiao Xuanzi, you are pretty lucky to encounter such sword intent. Comprehend it well. Don't let this good fortune go to waste. Lin Xian's eyes revealed a look of excitement. It was indeed sword intent. It was much more brilliant than Jiang Yulong's sword stance. If he could comprehend sword intent, his future achievements would definitely be limitless. Since Lin Xian couldn't get out now, he drew out his steel sword and began to practice the second stage of the thunderclap sword technique. Every stage of the thunderclap sword technique had a sword technique. For example, the first stage was the one sword technique. The second stage also had a sword technique called Fury of the Thunder God. In fact, the most difficult stage of the lightning eclipse sword art was the first stage because it required one to control the force. Once a warrior grasped it, the subsequent stages would be much easier. Lin Xian brandished his sword with the force of lightning. He didn't know if it was because of what had happened, but he felt that his sword wielding was much smoother than before. Furthermore, when he tried to imitate the god-fiend-like man, the might of the sword in his hand increased. This change delighted him, so he decided to experience it again. However, when he placed his hand on the stone monument, there were no changes. Don't waste time. This sword intent isn't complete. Besides, it's already imprinted in your mind, Lord Alcohol explained. Lin Xian closed his eyes and recalled. Indeed, he could clearly see the scene of the tall man striking with his sword. He recalled it over and over again. Finally, all the sword moves vanished, leaving only the tall man. And at that moment, Lin Xian only felt one thing: invincible. The belief of invincibility. Lin Xian muttered. With a sword in hand, I'm invincible. Even without a sword, I'm invincible. I never expected you to be able to comprehend this. Lord Alcohol smiled cheerfully. Sword moves are secondary. The most important thing is to have an invincible heart. An invincible heart. Lin Xian's eyes gradually emitted a luster. He still didn't know how much today's encounter would affect his future. Concepts were mysterious and profound. Some people could gain an epiphany in an instant, while others might not be able to understand it for the rest of their lives. Lin Xian had gained something, but he was unable to fully understand it. However, as he matured, this seed of invincibility would one day germinate in his heart. Like water flowing naturally, he mastered the second stage of the lightning eclipse sword art. Everything seemed so natural. Lin Xian's cultivation was still at the fourth stage of the meridian condensation period, but his strength had nearly doubled. It's time to break through. Lin Xian put away his sword. The recent battles had loosened the fifth spirit meridian in his body. He could break through at any time. Chapter 38. Lin Xian sat on the ground with his back against the stone monument. The longevity art in his body surged and quickly opened his fifth spirit meridian. His aura instantly soared as an invisible shockwave swept out in all directions. The longevity art was very special. After Lin Xian cultivated it, the spiritual energy in his body was abnormally strong. His current spiritual energy was not weaker than a cultivator at the sixth stage of the meridian condensation realm. If he really broke through to the sixth stage of the meridian condensation realm, he would probably be able to wipe out all the sixth stage cultivators with a single hand. Lin Xian slowly opened his eyes. His long and narrow eyes flickered from time to time as a lazy smile hung on his face. My cultivation has increased, but I only found one stone. It looks like I have to hurry. Lin Xian was filled with enthusiasm. I want a spirit root! Lord Alcohol shouted. I want a treasure sword! Lin Xian was not to be outdone. He carried the steel sword and walked in. Not long after, a faint fog surged in front of him. Lin Xian felt dizzy from afar. Not good, there's poison. He quickly retreated. His instant shadow steps had reached the small success stage, so his speed was definitely impressive. Leaving behind afterimages, Lin Xian arrived at a safe place in the blink of an eye. Since he couldn't go in deeper, it looked like he could only head out. Lin Xian made up his mind and headed outside. The further he went, the more alarmed Lin Xian became. The moment he approached the outside, he felt the spiritual energy in his body rapidly depleting. This made him very alarmed. F***CK. It's dangerous inside and outside. Only the center is safe. What kind of crappy place is this? Lin Xian looked helpless. Unable to think of a solution for the time being, he could only stay near the stone monument. The night was pitch black. Lin Xian chopped down some black trees to use as firewood, but it didn't take long for him to realize that he had caused trouble. From the chopped trees, a black whirlwind rose up and swept towards Lin Xian. The fire that had just been lit was extinguished in an instant, and a huge suction force pulled at him crazily. Lin Xian's body flickered with light. Green spiritual energy formed a thin film around his body to resist the black wind. At the same time, he dug his feet into the ground and resisted with all his might. Whoosh! Whoosh! Not long after, black whirlwinds came from all directions, quickly moving towards Lin Xian. At this critical moment, a black spirit energy gushed out from his body. Half of his body was covered with black lotus patterns, and 2 black lotus leaves wrapped around Lin Xian, blocking all the black whirlwinds outside. A moment later, all the black winds disappeared, and the lotus patterns on Lin Xian's body also disappeared. He felt that the mysterious black spiritual power in his body was gradually disappearing, and his face was extremely solemn. In the past, it was this force that prevented him from cultivating, but now it was protecting him. This made Lin Xian a little confused. Xiao Xuanzi, there are quite a number of brown stones behind you. Lord Alcohol's voice interrupted Lin Xian's thoughts. Lord Alcohol's condition couldn't provide Lin Xian with any substantial strength, so he couldn't do anything in the previous scene. Lin Xian knew this, but this fellow was always unwilling to mention the Black Lotus, which made him gnash his teeth. He helplessly turned his head and was immediately given a fright. 7 or 8 brown stones were scattered on the ground. The largest was the size of a millstone, and the smallest was the size of a fist. So many? Lin Xian was slightly taken aback. They must have been blown here by the strange wind. Using the light from his spiritual energy, he placed the stones together and lit the firewood again. Thankfully, there was no strange black wind this time. Lin Xian knocked on the stones, preparing to cut them open one by one. His palm was like a knife, and with a swing, he cut open the brown stones. In the end, only 2 things were cut out of the 7 stones. One was the spirit root that Lord Alcohol needed, and the other was a black tile the size of a palm. Lord Alcohol put away the spirit root with a smile, while Lin Xian put away the black tile with a dark expression. Where's the promised sword? Lin Xian angrily hammered the stone monument beside him. Boom! Half of the stone monument collapsed, giving Lin Xian a fright. It's that weak? Lin Xian mumbled. All right, Xiao Xuanzi, on account of you helping me find the spirit root, I'll give you a sword, Lord Alcohol suddenly said. What? You have a sword? Lin Xian stomped his feet in anger. Why didn't you give it to me earlier, young man? You're too impatient, Lord Alcohol said unhurriedly. It's a little difficult to give it to you now. Give it a try if you don't believe me. As he spoke, a black vortex appeared in front of Lin Xian. Immediately following that, a dark red sword flew out and stabbed into the ground with a clang. Unlike ordinary 3-foot-long swords, this was a huge sword. The sword was very wide, but not thick. The hilt was long enough for Lin Xian to hold it with both hands. Lin Xian looked at the dark red sword that was covered in rust, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. Although he liked the look of the sword, it was too old. Many parts of it were covered in rust, and it was obvious that it was an antique. This is the treasure you gave me? Lin Xian asked worriedly. It won't break the moment I use it, right? Humph, it won't break even if you try. Lord Alcohol snorted. I originally wanted to give you this sword when you were stronger. It's too much of a stretch to give it to you now. Lin Xian was indignant. What do you mean by too much? He walked forward and reached out to grab the hilt. Comfortable, extremely comfortable. Lin Xian didn't want to let go of the sword the moment he held it. It felt like he was holding the hand of a goddess, and it was extremely comfortable. Exerting some strength, Lin Xian prepared to pull out the dark red sword and use it to practice the lightning eclipse sword art. However, the dark red sword didn't budge at all. Humph! Lord Alcohol snorted and said faintly, You are indeed too young. Lin Xian's face darkened. He exerted some strength, but it still didn't budge. He was stunned as he let out a low growl and used all his strength. Finally, the dark red sword slowly rose and left the ground. Damn, it's so heavy. What material is it made of? Lin Xian couldn't help but curse. Not bad. To be able to lift it with just the strength of your muscles, it looks like you are stronger than I imagined, Lord Alcohol said without holding back. Lin Xian's face darkened. He finally knew why Lord Alcohol said it was too much of a stretch. He circulated the longevity art as blue spirit energy pulsed out. A surge of energy surged out of his body. His arms finally stopped trembling, but with the support of his spirit energy, he still felt extremely heavy. Lin Xian tried to swing it twice and realized that his spirit energy was being depleted very quickly. Clang! Lin Xian stabbed the dark red sword into the ground and stood upright with it in hand. Uncle Alcohol, are you deliberately pranking me? How can I use the lightning eclipse sword art with this sword? Lord Alcohol took a sip of wine. You'll get used to it. Besides, conquering it will definitely bring you unexpected benefits. Think about it. If you can wield such a heavy sword like an embroidery needle, how strong will you be? Lin Xian obviously knew that he was just saying a few words. From the moment he held the sword, he fell in love with it. In the future, I will walk down the path of martial arts with you, Lin Xian whispered. I'll call you Red Flame. He injected blue spirit energy into the sword. The next moment, the rust on the sword suddenly shimmered with a red glow. Strange runes could be vaguely seen, making it look extremely mysterious. Chapter 39. Early in the morning, the surroundings were quiet. A slender youth wielded a dark red broadsword as he brandished it in the steel forest. If one were to observe carefully, they would realize that he wasn't cultivating any profound sword technique, but the most ordinary basic sword technique in the Lin Wu continent. Although it was a basic sword technique, the youth wasn't perfunctory. Every strike was executed with all his strength. Slash, stab, lift, sweep. These basic movements appeared in the youth's hands again and again. After 100 repetitions, the youth sheathed his sword and stabbed it into the ground. Then, he slowly exhaled. Chi! Like piercing tofu, the dark red broadsword easily stabbed into the ground. The youth stretched his arms and whispered, I've basically adapted to the weight of this red flame broadsword. Furthermore, my spirit energy has increased so much. I'm afraid I'll break through to the sixth order soon. That's natural. Your spirit energy circulation speed is more than twice as fast as before, right? Another voice sounded. Also, don't you realize that this place is very strange? This youth was none other than Lin Xian. He smiled and said, Of course it's strange. Other than the stone steels and black plants, there's nothing that can move. You're still too young. You can't feel the power of the laws. This place seems to be a world of its own. The laws here are different from the outside world, Lord Alcohol said in a deep voice. At least in terms of time, this place is different from the outside world. Seeing Lin Xian's confusion, Lord Alcohol continued. This demon abyss should be in an independent small sealed world. The place you are now in is a buffer zone between the small sealed world and the great world. Inside is another world that you can't enter. Outside is the great world with a distorted space in the middle. What's the point? Lin Xian curled his lips and asked. A few days here is equivalent to a few hours in the outside world. Furthermore, the closer you are to the demon abyss, the more obvious the effect will be, Lord Alcohol directly concluded. Xiao Xuanzi, this is a rare opportunity. You can use it to completely master this broadsword, Lord Alcohol said. Really? Lin Xian was originally worried about the upcoming intersect test, but now, it seemed that all his problems had been resolved. But will I starve to death? Lin Xian worriedly said. I am only a little spiritual knight in the meridian's condensing stage. I am simply unable to absorb the spiritual power of heaven and earth. I have a way to ensure that you won't starve to death, Lord Alcohol said. However, it might consume some of my energy. Xiao Xuanzi, you have to continue looking for spirit herbs to help me brew wine. Don't worry, Uncle Drunkard. As long as I can enter the intersect, I guarantee that I'll find you a bunch of spiritual herbs, Lin Xian promised as he patted his chest. Just like that, Lin Xian picked up the crimson flame greatsword, walked closer to the Devil Abyss, and began to cultivate again, outside the Taihang Mountains. A group of people wearing silver light armor were fleeing in the forest in a sorry state. Damn it, the people of the Black Sky sect are too ruthless. They actually killed so many of our brothers, a bald man said. Second brother, let's retreat. They are from the Divine Might group, and they even have the help of the 4 heroes of the outer sect. We can't fight them at all, the bearded middle-aged man said with hatred. Damn it, we didn't even take the brown stone, but these people are still chasing us. We won't be able to take revenge for Jixing for the time being. Let's retreat. The bald man clenched his teeth and said. Thus, the surviving members of the Viper mercenary group quickly retreated, in another direction, at the exit of the brownstone. Members of various factions were gathered here. There were disciples of the Black Sky sect and Zixia sect. Senior Marshal Brother Jiang, according to our calculations, a batch of brown stones will be ejected in about an hour. Jiang Yilong nodded. He had to get the brown stone this time. He had been in the Devil Abyss for 5 days and had only obtained 1 brown stone. However, there was nothing inside. In other words, he had wasted the past 5 days. Humph! Duan Fei from the battle group obtained 3, Shenlan from the Tsingyi Association obtained 2, but I don't know about the intersect disciples. Jiang Yulong calculated and realized that he had obtained the least. Yua, don't worry. I'll definitely get you a brown divine stone in a while. A flattering voice entered Jiang Yulong's ears. He frowned and glanced at it, then snorted coldly. Not far behind, a purple-clothed youth was pestering Tang Yu. It was the second young master Ding from the Zixia sect. Ding Xiang, stay away from me. Be careful or my brother will beat you when he comes back. Tang Yu was annoyed. Your brother has already been invited by Senior Marshal Brother Lu Qing to spar. But don't worry, I'll protect you. The purple-clothed youth, Ding Xiang, said as he flicked his hair. Duan Fei's face darkened. He was handsome and was one of the 4 heroes of the outer sect. He thought that Tang Yu was his woman. However, the purple-clothed youth in front of him actually shamelessly pestered Tang Yu for the whole morning. He had long wanted to slap him to death. However, this youth's brother, Ding Hao, was a top expert of the younger generation. He was known as Yunzhou's swift blade. With such a strong brother, Duan Fei naturally didn't dare to make a move. Just as he was gnashing his teeth in hatred, someone suddenly shouted, "The divine stone is coming out!" Duan Fei hurriedly turned his head and stared straight ahead, ready to make a move at any time. The others also looked eager to give it a try. Jiang Yulong's hand even tightened on his long sword. Chi-chi. Suddenly, the sound of something breaking through the air came from the front. Everyone tensed up. A fist-sized brown stone flew over. Everyone didn't move because there was a huge shadow behind it. This shadow must be an incomparably huge stone. This was the first time it had appeared. Jiang Yulong licked his lips. He must get his hands on this stone. However, he soon realized that something was wrong. Not only him, but everyone else also noticed the abnormality. There was actually a person standing on this stone. How can there be a living person in the pit? Could it be a demon? Many people turned pale with fright. If a Supreme Demon King really jumped out, they would all die here. No, it's a youth. Someone discovered the new situation. This clothing. It's a disciple of the Black Sky sect. Everyone widened their eyes. They couldn't figure out why a disciple of the Black Sky sect would come out of the demon pit. They saw a delicate and pretty youth with a dark red sword on his back. He was standing very confidently on the brown stone. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and there was an indescribable confidence in his eyes. Whoosh! The youth jumped off the stone and whistled with a smile. Thank you for coming to pick me up. The stone is flying, go after it. Thank you, my ass! Everyone cursed in their hearts. They were waiting for the brown divine stone, okay? However, after the youth's reminder, many people came to their senses and quickly chased after the stones. Lin Xian, it's Lin Xian! Finally, someone recognized the youth. The members of the Divine Might group surrounded him with dark expressions. They knew that Lin Xian's appearance was nothing good. Jiang Yulong frowned. He walked forward with a cold expression, and his icy gaze shone on Lin Xian. I've said before that I'll wring your head off the next time I see you, Jiang Yulong said coldly. Is that so? Lin Xian had a lazy smile on his face, but his tone was as cold as a blade. I think I've also said before that I'll defeat you with the sword in my hand the next time we meet. Chapter 40. Lin Xian's words caused an uproar among the crowd. Everyone looked at him with disdain. How dare you fight with the 4 heroes of the outer sect? You're courting death. That's right. You want to defeat senior brother Jiang? Look at yourself. You think you're a god just because you fly on a stone? You must have been kicked in the head by a donkey. Everyone mocked Lin Xian. Duan Fei, who was also one of the 4 heroes, smiled disdainfully while Jiang Yulong laughed out loud. Kid, although I don't know how you came out of the Devil's Abyss, it's a joke if you think you can defeat me with this. Kneel down and apologize now and I might let you live. Lin Xian pulled out the crimson flame sword from his back. He now had complete control over the weight of the crimson flame sword. The dark red blade slid slowly, flashing a demonic light under the sunlight. Ha ha! I'm dying of laughter. Are you here to show off? You're actually holding a rusty sword. I know you're poor, but you don't have to use such a broken sword. You want to challenge senior brother Jiang with this? The corners of Lin Xian's mouth curled up slightly. He did not care about what these people were saying. To him, action was the best weapon to use. With a swing of his arm, the crimson flame sword turned into a red shadow and slashed towards Jiang Yulong. TSK, you don't even have spiritual power! Are you retarded? Senior brother Jiang, kill him! Lin Xian did not use any spiritual power. He was purely using his physical strength. He had already mastered the golden jade body tempering technique. Not only was his body extremely hard, but his strength had also reached a terrifying level. Jiang Yulong saw that Lin Xian did not have any spiritual power fluctuations. His eyes were full of disdain. He stood casually and did not use any spiritual power to protect his body. However, his pupils suddenly shrank and he quickly retreated. A red light flashed in the air, and the crimson flame sword instantly arrived above his head. The violent power brought about countless gusts of wind. With one sword, the wind and clouds moved. The surrounding disciples were forced back 3 steps by this gust of wind. Those with weaker cultivations had already begun to circulate their spirit energy to protect themselves. They all looked at Lin Xian in horror. They couldn't believe that such a frail youth could release such a powerful force. After the first strike, Lin Xian swung his sword in reverse. The red flame greatsword once again slashed towards Jiang Yulong at an unbelievable angle. You're courting death! Jiang Yulong lost the initiative and took a step back awkwardly. Then, he pulled out his sword and flew into a rage. In an instant, purple flames wrapped around the sword. In the air, the temperature suddenly skyrocketed, as if it was going to roast people. Boom! The long sword burning with purple flames clashed with Lin Xian's red flame greatsword. A circle of energy visible to the naked eye spread out in all directions. Many disciples were shaken to the point that their faces turned pale and their bodies swayed. The two forces were evenly matched and bounced off each other, creating a string of sparks in the air. How is this possible? He actually managed to take on senior brother Zhang's attack? Am I seeing things? Many people began to rub their eyes hard. Impossible. Senior brother Jiang must not have used his full strength. When senior brother Jiang gets serious, this kid is dead meat. Damn it. How did this guy's strength increase so quickly? Jiang Yulong frowned. I have to get rid of him. Otherwise, he will become a huge threat. Thinking of this, he waved his long sword and a strange aura gradually formed. Sword force! Lin Xian's eyes were deep and there was a flash of excitement. I'll use you to test the power of my new sword technique. Lin Xian held his sword with one hand and went up to meet the attack. His face was calm and there was a confident smile on his face. His body also formed an aura like a peerless divine sword that was incomparably sharp. The two forces were on the verge of colliding. At this moment, a voice came from afar and turned into thunder. Stop! This voice contained a strong energy, but Lin Xian and Jiang Yulong did not seem to hear it. They continued to wave their long swords with all their might. Whoosh! A flying knife cut through the air and flew over from afar like a bolt of lightning. It was dazzling. Ding! The dazzling flying knife touched the two long swords, creating a ball of white light and forcibly separating the two people. Lin Xian felt as if a mountain was pressing down on him. The force almost made him lose his grip on the big sword in his hand. What a terrifying force! Who is this person? Lin Xian was shocked. At this moment, a figure floated over. It was a handsome young man. He bent his 5 fingers and pulled back, sucking a small flying knife into his hand. Lin Xian was stunned when he saw the young man's palm. He could not help but exclaim in admiration. The young man's palm was abnormally white, and his fingers were slender like jade. Lin Xian even felt that such a pair of beautiful hands should not be on a man's body. Brother! A clear voice rang out. Then, a fiery red figure rushed into everyone's eyes. It's Tang Yi! Lin Xian naturally knew the young man's identity after seeing Tang Yi. It was a top inner sect expert, Tang Yi. As expected of an inner sect expert. His strength is unfathomable. For the first time, Lin Xian had a clear understanding of the inner sect disciples. Tang Yi rubbed Tang Yu's head dotingly and walked over with a straight face. As a disciple of the Black Heaven sect, you must always remember not to disgrace these 3 words. Thank you for your advice, senior brother. Lin Xian will remember it. Seeing Lin Xian being so polite, Tang Yi's expression softened a little. He turned to look at Jiang Yulong. Jiang Yulong gritted his teeth and his expression changed a few times. Finally, he cupped his fists and said, Yulong will remember senior brother's words. Then, he stared at Lin Xian and said in an unfriendly manner, In the intersect selection in a month's time, I'll break all the bones in your body in front of everyone. Everyone was shocked. Jiang Yulong was issuing a challenge. The genius of the outer sect's top 4 had issued a challenge. I'm looking forward to it. Lin Xian's expression was calm, as if he was agreeing to something insignificant. Heavens! Lin Xian actually agreed to it. Is he crazy? The disciples of the Black Heaven sect were shocked. This matter would probably sweep the entire outer sect. Let's go! Jiang Yulong sneered and left with the members of the Godly Might group. Lin Xian finally returned to his room. The events of the past few days were like a dream to him. It was extremely bizarre. After a good rest, Lin Xian once again immersed himself in intense cultivation. He was now gradually transforming. Both his body and spirit were rapidly growing. Thinking about the competition in a month's time, Lin Xian's heart stirred. The inner sect selection was the competition that the outer sect disciples cared about the most. It determined whether an outer sect disciple could enter the inner sect or not. The ranking in the selection corresponded to the degree of importance one would receive after entering the inner sect. The higher the ranking, the more attention one would receive from the upper echelons of the inner sect. Moreover, the sect was willing to nurture such a genius. I want to get first place, Lin Xian said firmly. In the past, he was a good-for-nothing who couldn't cultivate, and suffered all kinds of humiliation. Now, he could cultivate. Of course, he wanted to stand at the peak of martial arts. He wanted to obtain great power and return to his family as a powerhouse. Chapter 41. In the following days, Lin Xian went to the mountains to practice his swordsmanship during the day and practice the art of longevity at night. Occasionally, he would go to the mission hall to repair his long sword and earn contribution points. These days passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. The atmosphere in the outer sect was also changing quietly. Many disciples had returned from Taihang Mountain to prepare for the inner sect tryouts. Only by entering the inner sect could one be considered a true disciple of the Black Heaven sect. Inside, not only could one learn profound martial arts, but one could also receive guidance from high-level cultivators. In addition to all kinds of rich cultivation resources, all the outer sect disciples could not wait to squeeze into the inner sect. At the same time, a new outer sect ranking list was released. Many outer sect disciples had been discussing this matter and checking their own rankings these few days. The outer sect ranking list only ranked the top 500. It was based on a disciple's cultivation and daily performance to estimate their combat strength. No one knew who created this list. There was once a disciple who was dissatisfied with a lower ranking and challenged a higher ranking disciple. The result was a crushing defeat. Except for hundreds of such cases, the final result was the same as the ranking list. Only then did the outer sect disciples accept the ranking list and use it as an important means to understand the strength of others. On the third training field, He Xiaobing looked at the exquisite booklet in his hand with a trace of anger on his face. This booklet was the outer sect ranking list. It was very exquisite, but it did not attract He Xiaobing's interest at all. Humph! He closed the booklet tightly and crushed it in his hand. Soon, the name list was reduced to a pile of dust. This is too much! How dare they lower my ranking? He Xiaobing's eyes burned with anger. He was originally ranked 100th on the ranking list, which was one of the top disciples. Who would have thought that he would be ranked 101st this time? Although it was only a difference of one place, the meaning behind it was very different. Among the tens of thousands of outer sect disciples, the top 100 were the top disciples. They were the geniuses of the first echelon, and would be specially valued after entering the inner sect. Now that he was ranked 101st, he was a second echelon disciple. His status was completely different. The one who replaced him in the 100th place was a new outer sect disciple named Lin Xian. How can a little disciple who just joined the outer sect be ranked in the top 100? I refuse to accept this. He Xiaobing clenched the long sword in his hand. Xiaobing, calm down. A slightly plump disciple by the side said. I've heard of this Lin Xian before. Recently, he's been in a huge mess with the Divine Might group. It's said that he's defeated many of the Divine Might group's disciples consecutively. He must have some strength. So what? You think I'll lose too? He Xiaobing said angrily. The outer sect of the Black Heaven sect was very big, and there were many disciples. Not everyone knew Lin Xian, and with so many things happening every day, they had long forgotten the name of a young disciple. It's not that I'm afraid you'll lose, but there's no need to do so. Can't you just defeat him fair and square during the inner court selection? He Xiaobing did not say anything, but a cold light flashed in his eyes from time to time. 7th Martial Arts Practice Field, northwest corner. Lin Xian held the crimson flame great sword and practiced meticulously. This was a new sword technique he had learned, the Lonely Mountain sword technique. It was a mid-grade yellow rank martial art. This sword technique was different from the ones Lin Xian had learned in the past. It wasn't known for its speed, but rather the kind that was heavy and powerful. Its speed was very slow, and every strike was filled with power. Whoosh! Whoosh! Lin Xian felt very good when he brandished the broad moves. He had been studying fast sword techniques in the past, but now that he was practicing slow sword techniques, he had a new understanding. This Lonely Mountain sword technique focused on stability, accuracy, and ruthlessness. Although it was slow, as long as the timing was right, it could definitely kill in one strike. After today's slow sword practice, Lin Xian's grasp of timing in battle was much stronger than before. Fast sword was about seizing the initiative and controlling the enemy first, while slow sword was about seizing the opponent's mistakes or creating mistakes. With the combination of fast and slow, Lin Xian's sword technique had already surpassed the past. Just as Lin Xian was immersed in the sword technique, a youth walked towards him. He was thin, had big eyes, and a cold gaze. You're Lin Xian? The youth's tone was unfriendly. That's right. Lin Xian stood with his sword and asked, What's the matter? Defeat you and take back my rightful ranking. The youth was He Xiaobing. Lin Xian was a little confused. What ranking? Stop playing dumb. You just need to tell me if you accept the challenge. He Xiaobing shouted. He Xiaobing's shout caused the surrounding disciples who were practicing martial arts to look back. At this moment, a slightly plump youth ran over from afar. He grabbed He Xiaobing's hand and said, Xiaobing, let's go. Little Wei, don't worry about me. I must defeat him today. He Xiaobing said loudly. Weaklings don't deserve that spot. What's going on? Someone nearby asked. You don't know? He Xiaobing's 100th place was squeezed out by that kid. Someone secretly pointed at Lin Xian. No wonder he's angry. A kid who just entered the outer sect climbed over his head. If it were me, I would be anxious too. Lin Xian pricked up his ears and understood a little. Since you want to fight, then bring it on. Lin Xian wanted to verify the Lonely Mountain sword technique. Humph! He Xiaobing gritted his teeth and said, You better use your full strength, or else you will lose miserably. With a flip of his palm, he took out a disc array and sent out spirit energy with both hands. The large green flag rose in the wind and with a clang, it stabbed into the ground and formed a small arena. Array flag battle! Lin Xian was no stranger to it. He had fought this competition with the disciples of the Shenwei group before. Immediately, he pulled out the red flame greatsword and walked into the array flag with a lazy smile. He Xiaobing snorted coldly and with a move of his body he went in. The surrounding disciples stopped what they were doing and gathered around. The disciple called Little Wei waited with a pair of big eyes and watched nervously. Come on! Lin Xian held the red flame greatsword in front of his chest and stood with rapt attention. Chi! A flash of cold light exploded and made a hurried sound. He Xiaobing's body swayed and he quickly charged forward. The long sword at his waist glowed with cold light. In the blink of an eye, he was already beside Lin Xian. With a flick of his wrist, the long sword pounced like a venomous snake. The speed was so fast that it caught everyone's attention. Fast sword flow. Lin Xian raised his eyebrows. With a slight movement of his feet, he adjusted his body and at the same time sent out the great sword in his hand, intercepting He Xiaobing's sword move. Ding ding ding! He Xiaobing's longsword clashed against the body of the red flame greatsword and made a crisp sound. After his attack failed, he raised his sword and attacked Lin Xian's head. The tip of the sword emitted a cold light. Lin Xian's arm swept out and the red flame greatsword swept out. The heavy power forced He Xiaobing to stop his sword move and retreat to save his life. With this retreat, he immediately revealed a flaw. Lin Xian's great sword vibrated and stabbed over. Chapter 42. He Xiaobing retreated in fear, but Lin Xian's sword was faster than him. A brilliant red light flashed past, as fast as lightning, stunning everyone. When everyone came back to their senses, they realized that Lin Xian's red flame sword was pressed against He Xiaobing's chest. With just a little bit of force, it would pierce through his heart. He Xiaobing did not dare to move. His face was pale, and his eyes were filled with fear. What a fast sword! What precise control! There were also experts in the top 100 on the martial arts field. When they saw such a battle, they could not help but take a deep breath. Lin Xian's strength was above their expectations. How much confidence did he need to dare to aim for a vital point like the heart? One must know that killing was not allowed in the sect, especially for an elite like He Xiaobing who could become an inner sect disciple. He was not allowed to be killed for no reason. Lin Xian actually dared to aim for his opponent's heart during a spar. This meant that he had enough confidence to control it well. Under such speed and power, to suddenly withdraw a move without any mistake was something that the spectating disciples could not do. I lost," He Xiaobing said dejectedly. Whoosh! Lin Xian put away his red flame sword and left the array flag arena. "Your sword technique is not bad, but your grasp of timing is not very good. You need to practice in real combat." Huh! He Xiaobing was stunned. Lin Xian was giving him pointers. He scratched his head. Lin Xian was right. He rarely hunted ferocious beasts, and he rarely sparred with his fellow disciples. Most of the time, he spent his time cultivating by himself. Many thanks," He Xiaobing said seriously. "Your strength is enough to enter the top 100. I was too impulsive this time." "Top 100? Lin Xian asked. "What top 100? I really don't know why you fought with me." "Because of this." The chubby youth called Little Wei walked forward and handed Lin Xian a roster. Outer sect ranking. Lin Xian was curious about the results and quickly looked through it. Ranked first was a disciple called Shangguan Luyan, followed by Jiang Yulong, Duan Fei, and the others. Lin Xian found his name in the 100th position, and then He Xiaobing's name in the 101st position. Only then did he understand what had happened. The eyes of this ranking person are really sharp. I really overestimated myself. He Xiaobing mocked himself. It's nothing. Don't worry about it. Believe in yourself. Lin Xian smiled. He didn't think that he only had the strength of 100th place. His goal was to get first place. What? He Xiaobing's eyes widened. This Lin Xian didn't seem to believe the rankings on the leaderboard. The two of them hesitated for a long time, but in the end, they didn't say anything. You can always find me to spar in the future. Lin Xian patted He Xiaobing's shoulder. He Xiaobing was stunned for a moment, then said happily, Yes, I'll definitely improve next time. With that, he left with his good friend Xiao Wei. Xiaobing, this Lin Xian seems to be different from the others, Xiao Wei said. Yes, I have a feeling that he's definitely not just in the 100th position. I really hope that someone can break the curse of the rankings. He Xiaobing's eyes were filled with anticipation. When the surrounding youths saw that Lin Xian wasn't arrogant after winning and even gave his opponent some pointers, They immediately looked at him in a new light. Other than the disciples of the three major factions who laughed in disdain, the disciples who didn't join any groups had an inexplicable feeling towards Lin Xian. Lin Xian, right? My name is Guan Yunfei. I wonder if I can spar with you. Not long after, a disciple went up to challenge him. Lin Xian gladly accepted. In his opinion, cultivating in seclusion wasn't as fast as improving in actual combat. After Guan Yunfei, many disciples came to spar with Lin Xian. There were two reasons. First, Lin Xian's swordsmanship was brilliant. They could learn a lot from fighting with him. Second, his attacks were very accurate. Those who fought with him didn't have to worry about getting injured. Soon the day passed. Lin Xian fought with a dozen youths one by one. Finally, he sat on the martial arts field to rest. The sun was setting in the west. The afterglow shone on the martial arts field as if it was draped with a layer of golden gauze. Older brother Xian, are you even human? You're like a monster. After fighting so many battles, you're actually not tired at all, Guan Yunfei said enviously. That's right. We're all exhausted, but you're actually acting like nothing happened, Lin Xian laughed. When his secret art of long life opened the fifth spiritual vein, it gradually revealed its power. Although his cultivation was still at the fifth stage of the meridian's condensation stage, his spiritual energy was twice that of a normal fifth stage spiritual knight. It was even more than a normal willow stage spiritual knight. This greatly increased the duration of his battle. Older brother Xian, how about we fight again tomorrow? The youths asked expectantly. Okay, no problem. Lin Xian just happened to want to practice the shadow step to the large success stage, so he straightforwardly agreed. Under the illumination of the setting sun, the youths quickly ran towards the dormitory area. As the day of the inner sex election approached, the number of disciples who went to the mission hall to pick up missions decreased. Chen Dajing finally had some leisure time. I really envy those who can enter the inner sect. Chen Dajing began to organize the information. Excuse me, senior brother, can I issue a mission? A weak voice sounded. What? The voice was too soft, so Chen Dajing didn't hear it clearly. So sorry, I want to issue a mission. This time, the voice was a bit louder, but it was still like the buzzing of a mosquito. Chen Dajing helplessly turned around and discovered that it was actually a young girl standing in front of him. She had a head full of jet black hair and a pair of eyes that were like gems. Because of shyness, there was a faint blush on her fair face. She had a weak and helpless appearance. Oh, sure. What mission do you want to issue? Chen Dajing seemed to have never seen such a delicate disciple before. He couldn't help but take a few more glances. The young girl shyly lowered her head and muttered, My long sword is broken. I want to fix it. After saying that, she handed over the long sword in her hand. Chen Dajing glanced at it, then said, Why don't you leave it here first? I'll issue the mission for you. When it's fixed, I'll inform you. However, there will be a handling fee and mission fee. Ah? The young girl didn't seem to think that it would be so troublesome. She whispered, Then forget it. The young girl gently put the long sword away, then turned around and prepared to leave. Hey, wait a minute! Chen Dajing sighed. He quickly wrote a line of words on a piece of white paper and handed it over. If you want to fix your long sword, go find him. In the entire outer sect, I'm afraid that only he can fix your weapon. The young girl took the slip of paper and curiously looked at it. She discovered that it was an outer sect disciple's dormitory disciple. She thanked him, then lowered her head and left. It was noon and the sun was just right. Lin Xian didn't go to the dojo today. He needed to digest what he had gained from cultivating these past few days and test the results of his cultivation. First was the Thunder Movement sword art. The first stage had already reached the stage of great mastery, the second stage had reached the stage of small mastery, and would soon reach great mastery. The Lonely Mountain sword art had reached the stage of perfection, the Flickering Shadow step had reached great mastery, and the Golden Jade body tempering secret had reached great mastery. Right now, he could completely suppress a 5th-level spirit knight just by relying on the power of his body. Very good, the martial arts in his hands were more or less practiced. The next step was to break through to Ningmai's 6th level. Lin Xian's eyes were filled with confidence. Dong dong dong! A series of low knocks came, breaking the silence of the little room. Chapter 43. Lin Xian pushed open the door and found an unfamiliar girl standing outside. You are? Lin Xian thought for a moment, and realized that he didn't know the girl. Excuse me. Do you know how to repair weapons? The girl said with a red face. The senior brother from the mission hall sent me here. He said that only you can repair it. Chen Dajing? Lin Xian was enlightened. There's more contribution points to earn. Come in, he said with a smile. The girl blushed as she walked into Lin Xian's hut. Then, she stood there nervously, unsure of where to place her hands. All she could do was grip the corner of her clothes tightly. Take out your weapon and let me take a look. Lin Xian sat down and looked like he was working seriously. The girl handed over the sword by her waist and looked at it nervously. Her black gem-like eyes didn't blink, afraid that she would miss something. Lin Xian took a careful look and realized that it wasn't an ordinary sword, but a treasured artifact. There were inscriptions engraved on it, but they were blocked. It's actually a treasured artifact? From the looks of it, this girl was no ordinary person. The next moment, he seemed to think of something and said inwardly, Uncle Drunkard, it's time for you to shine. Xiao Xuanzi, what are you up to now? Lord Alcohol said bluntly. Hee, don't you know how to nurture swords? Why don't you teach me? Lin Xian said. Lord Alcohol rolled his eyes. Don't you always brag that you are a disciple of Sword Pool Manor, and that you have high attainments in weapon nurturing? Why are you interested in my techniques? Lin Xian lampooned inwardly. For this girl to have a treasured artifact, she likely had a special identity. He didn't want to expose his identity in weapon nurturing techniques like what had happened with Elder Fong. However, he wouldn't tell Lord Alcohol that. Didn't you call yourself Sword Absolute? Were you lying? Lin Xian curled his lips. Nonsense. Kid, how dare you doubt me? Lord Alcohol knew what Lin Xian was up to, but he said angrily, I'll let you know what a real weapon nurturing technique is. Lord Alcohol's voice was filled with anger, but his heart was blooming with joy. Haha, Xiao Xuanzi, inherit my mantle and bring my inscription skills to greater heights. Listen up. My inscription technique can not only nurture weapons, but after you master it, it can also raise the grade of weapons. It might even be possible for you to refine weapons. Lord Alcohol began imparting his ultimate technique. When the young girl saw that Lin Xian had been silent for a long time, her heart sank. She whispered, Senior brother, can you fix it? Lin Xian acted as if he hadn't heard anything. He kept his head down and didn't say anything. The girl's face fell. She bit her finger and was about to summon the courage to take back her sword when she saw Lin Xian move. His slender fingers moved as he drew strange runes on the sword. Furthermore, he flicked the sword from time to time, causing the sword to emit crisp sounds. Lin Xian's movements were abnormally agile. There was an indescribable charm to his movements that made people intoxicated and unable to extricate themselves. After a long time, Lin Xian flicked the sword again and completed the repair. The young girl was startled awake as she looked at Lin Xian with a blushing face. It's fixed. Lin Xian handed the sword over. 30 contribution points. Ah? The girl was taken aback before she understood. However, her face turned even redder, like a ripe apple. I. The girl nervously rubbed her hands. I don't have that many contribution points. Why don't I owe it to you first? I'll return it to you when I have enough, the girl whispered. Lin Xian frowned slightly. Did I guess wrong? Aren't you a rich second-generation heir? Seeing that the girl's expression didn't seem to be faking it, Lin Xian laughed. I'm just kidding. It's free service, no charge. Really? The girl's blushing face lit up. She said happily, Thank you, senior brother. Don't call me senior brother. My name is Lin Xian. What about you? Yin Qingyi, the girl said softly. Yin Qingyi. Lin Xian was slightly stunned. You're from the Qingyi Association? No. It's just someone with the same name. The girl was obviously shocked. If you have any problems with your sword in the future, come and find me. It's free service, Lin Xian said with a smile. Yin Qingyi stole a glance at Lin Xian. Her small face also revealed a smile. She thanked him again and left. Lin Xian stood outside the door, looking at Yin Qingyi's back with a smile. Just as he was about to go back, a disciple beside him suddenly teased him. Brother Xian, if you can't bear to, go after her. Go after her, my ass! She's here to repair her weapon! Lin Xian jokingly scolded. F***ck. Brother Xian, you know how to repair weapons? The nearby neighbors poked their heads out. These youths were all unaffiliated and didn't join any groups. However, they admired Lin Xian very much, so they had become familiar with him over the past few days. Brother Xian, help me take a look. Someone took out his weapon. Lin Xian didn't reject anyone. He was familiar with Lord Alcohol's inscription techniques. He realized that Lord Alcohol's technique was very unique. It wasn't a common mainstream technique, but the effects were surprisingly good. Uncle, I didn't expect you to have some skills, Lin Xian praised in his heart. Xiao Xuanzi, call me master. I'll teach you my unique skills, Lord Alcohol said angrily. Lin Xian was speechless. Within a few days, most of the people in the dormitory district knew that there was a youth who knew how to repair weapons in South District Hut 25. Many disciples went there out of admiration. 3 days before the intersex election, a group of youths arrived in front of Lin Xian's Hut 25. F***ck. It's a disciple from the East District. The nearby disciples whispered. The East District was different from the South District. The South District belonged to the commoners. Everyone had a hut next to each other. Other than that, there was nothing else. The East District was different. It was definitely a place where only the rich and powerful could live. There were independent courtyards with specialized training rooms. Some of them were even equipped with bamboo forest guards. These were definitely not something that ordinary youths could imagine. The group of youths escorted a young girl to Lin Xian's hut with arrogance on their faces. Lin, come out quickly! A youth shouted. After shouting a few times, they realized that there was no movement in the hut in front of them. The youth coldly snorted and pushed the door open. The hut was empty. There was no one inside. Are you looking for Brother Xian? Lin Xian's left neighbor, Ding Xiaoping, said. Wait a moment. Brother Xian will probably be back at noon. What? You want us to wait for him? These people said disdainfully. Kid, are you familiar with this Lin Xian? Hurry up and find him. Our time is precious. Brother Xian left early in the morning. I don't know where he went. Ding Xiaoping whispered. F***ck. If I tell you to look for him, then go look for him. Why are you spouting so much nonsense? The youth slapped Ding Xiaoping's face. Ding Xiaoping's body was sent flying. He covered his face, tears of pain welling up in his eyes. What right do you have to hit him? The nearby youths couldn't stand it anymore. Io, you want to rebel? The group of youths disdainfully said. I came to your South District to give you face. This Lin Xian actually dares to make us wait for him. He's simply reckless. What right do you have to hit him? What right do you have to talk about Brother Xian? These youths refused to accept it. They were all young and vigorous, so they naturally couldn't tolerate this kind of thing. What, you don't accept it? The youth laughed. Attack. Beat them until they're convinced. Immediately, 4 or 5 youths from the East District pounced forward. Lin Xian went to Elder Fang's place in the morning to repair some weapons and earned a lot of contribution points. He hummed a little tune as he returned to the South District. However, he found that the atmosphere was a little strange. Normally, at this time, this group of people should have run out to discuss martial arts with him. Why didn't anyone come out today? Just as he was thinking, he heard a cry of surprise. Brother Xian is back. Chapter 44. Big Brother Xian is back. A disciple from the southern district shouted excitedly when he saw Lin Xian. Lin Xian smiled and nodded, but when he saw the disciple's face, his heart sank. He hurriedly used his footwork and rushed over. Whoosh! A figure floated by, bringing with it a gust of wind. When everyone saw clearly, they realized that Lin Xian was already in front of them. What's going on? Lin Xian's voice was filled with anger. He saw that the disciples around him were all bruised and covered in blood. Some of them couldn't even stand up and could only lean against the wall and groan. Big Brother Xian! These disciples clenched their fists and looked at the other group of people unwillingly. You're that Lin Xian who can repair weapons? At this moment, a cold voice came from the side. Lin Xian suppressed his anger and turned his head. He saw a girl in green being surrounded by a group of people like a proud little peacock. He asked coldly, You guys did it? Humph! They're just a bunch of trash. They can't even take a beating, the Eastern District youth said. How can they be called disciples of the Black Sky sect? I can beat them with one hand. Kid, I advise you to be sensible. Otherwise, you'll end up worse than them. These Eastern District disciples were very arrogant. Hurry up and repair my weapon. I don't have time to waste. Brother Ping is still waiting for me in the inner sect. At this moment, the girl in green spoke. So it was you guys who did it? Lin Xian sneered. He took a step forward and appeared in front of the girl as if he had teleported. You dare? A youth stood in front of him with a sinister smile. A pair of silver-white fists punched towards Lin Xian's lower abdomen. Slap! Before the Eastern District youth could react, he was sent flying. His entire face was deformed. All of his teeth fell out, his nose caved in, and blood splattered all over the ground. Lin Xian was very angry, very angry. Although these neighbors of his didn't have outstanding strength, they were very nice people and got along well with Lin Xian. Lin Xian even felt a long-lost sense of closeness from them. However, these youths from the East Borough had actually attacked these innocent youths over such a trivial matter. Furthermore, they had been so heavy-handed. They were completely inhumane. Since you're so willing to slap people in the face, I'll let you have a taste of it today. Lin Xian's tone was cold. You dare to make a move! The young girl was so angry that her whole body was trembling. All of you attack! Beat him to death! If anything happens, I'll take care of it. Whoosh! Whoosh! More than a dozen East District youths moved and pounced on Lin Xian. The youth at the front waved his hand, and a yellow light appeared in his palm. A powerful spiritual energy whirlpool rushed towards Lin Xian, whistling through the air. The Southern District disciples felt the cold wind blow on their faces, as if they were being cut by knives. Older Brother Xian, be careful! These South Region disciples were extremely nervous. The green-clothed girl, Lu Lan, arrogantly raised her chin. She looked at Lin Xian as if she was looking at a dead man. It was no wonder that she had such thoughts. This group of disciples were all level 5 spiritual knights of the Meridian stage. Among them, there were many true experts. For example, the one at the front was ranked 75th on the outer sect ranking list. When these people were added together, they were definitely a valiant force. Unfortunately, she met Lin Xian. Pa! Lin Xian took a step forward. His right hand passed through layers of fist shadows and directly slapped the face of the rank 75th youth. Immediately, teeth flew and blood splattered everywhere. Pa 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 pa! Lin Xian continuously waved his hand and sent more than a dozen East District youths flying. Then, they fell in a sorry state in front of the Southern District disciples. When the Southern District disciples saw this, they all stepped forward and used all their strength to kick these arrogant guys. Lin Xian coldly looked at the green-clothed girl, Luya. What are you doing? Lu Lan's body continuously retreated. Her eyes were filled with shock. That was a group of level 5 spiritual knights. Unexpectedly, they were all sent flying by this youth as if he was swatting flies. Was he still human? You also know how to be afraid? Lin Xian did not have the slightest bit of sympathy for these people. He coldly said, "Although I don't like to hit women, you seem to be an exception." Lu Lan fearfully pulled out the long sword on her body and pointed it at Lin Xian. "If you come any closer, I won't be polite anymore." This was a half artifact. Under the sunlight, it flashed with a faint cold light. That cold intent made people's heart palpitate. Lin Xian extended 2 fingers and clamped the sword tip. He secretly used the hidden energy of the thunderous sword art and forcefully twisted it. This half-artifact long sword was directly broken by Lin Xian. "Ah!" Lu Lan looked at the broken long sword in her hand and screamed in fear. She was now very sure that this youth in front of her was not human. "Scram! If you dare to cause trouble again, you will end up like this long sword," Lin Xian coldly shouted. Lu Lan was so frightened that her face turned pale. She threw away the broken sword in her hand and quickly fled like a defeated hen. The East District disciples covered their faces and fled. "Good job, Brother Xian!" "Too cool, Brother Xian!" The youths in the South District cheered. The depression in their hearts had completely dissipated. Lin Xian helped the youths apply the ointment, and then used his spiritual energy to dissolve it, allowing the ointment to take effect as soon as possible. Only then did he return to his room. There were only 3 days left until the inner sex election. Lin Xian felt a trace of excitement in his heart. Only by entering the inner sect would he have the possibility of becoming a core disciple. Just as Lin Xian was feeling emotional about the inner sect selection, Lord Alcohol interrupted his thoughts. "Xiao Xuanzi, I recently came up with something good. Do you want to try it?" "What good thing?" Lin Xian was very interested. He knew Lord Alcohol very well. If he could recommend something to Lord Alcohol, it definitely wouldn't be bad. "Yes, it's about the art of longevity," Lord Alcohol said. "This cultivation technique is more magical than you think. It's just that you haven't studied it." "Art of longevity?" Lin Xian stroked his chin. He hadn't studied it much. He only knew that the art of longevity produced an extremely rich and pure spiritual energy. "It looks like I need to give you a good lesson," Lord Alcohol said seriously. "Spiritual energy is divided into many attributes. You should know this, right?" Lin Xian nodded. This was basic knowledge. Of course he knew. Spiritual energy was divided into 5 major attributes: metal, wood, water, fire, earth, etc. There were also some mutated attributes such as wind, thunder, ice, etc. Each attribute produced a different effect. Since spiritual energy has attributes, the cultivation technique for cultivating spiritual energy will naturally be divided into different attributes. Have you ever thought about what attribute the art of longevity has? Lord Alcohol asked. With regards to this question, Lin Xian pondered for a moment before saying, "What attribute?" Lin Xian had his reasons for saying so. The art of longevity contained a lot of energy, and had a fast recovery speed. This was why Lin Xian had come up with such a conjecture. Up to now, the art of longevity shows more of the wood attribute, Lord Alcohol continued. However, it isn't only of the wood attribute. To be precise, it has no attribute. No attribute? Lin Xian was completely stunned. Chapter 45. Lin Xian had heard of many attributes, but he had never heard of attributeless before. There's a benefit to attributeless spiritual energy. It can evolve into any type of spiritual energy and can fuse with each other, said Lord Alcohol. If you have thunder attribute spiritual energy, your thunderclap sword art will reach perfection. Really? Lin Xian was pleasantly surprised. If the thunderclap sword art reaches perfection, how powerful would it be? However, you need to absorb a lightning origin or cultivate a lightning elemental cultivation technique. Only then can your sword art reach perfection, Lord Alcohol said. After the intersect qualifiers, I'll look for a thunder attribute cultivation technique or a thunder origin. Lin Xian made up his mind. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. And today was the day of the inner sect qualifiers. Tens of thousands of outer sect disciples set off and headed for the testing area. Lin Xian carried the crimson flame sword on his back and walked out of his house. Outside the house, the sky was cloudy and clear. In the huge square, there were countless disciples. Their faces were flushed with excitement. I wonder how many people will pass the first round? Someone asked with concern. Let's hope I can pass. Look, it's Jiang Yulong. Many outer sect disciples exclaimed. He's one of the 4 heroes. In the crowd, Jiang Yulong was dressed in white. He stood with a group of Divine Might group disciples behind him. Duan Fei is here too! Another exclamation sounded. Damn, the 4 heroes of the outer sect are all here today. Even if I can't pass the first round, it'll be worth it. In another direction, the handsome youth, Duan Fei, stood with a smile. He was surrounded by many female disciples. His exquisite face and graceful figure made countless male disciples spit fire in their hearts. As Duan Fei greeted the beauties with a smile, he casually glanced at Jiang Yulong. Jiang Yulong was also staring at Duan Fei. When their gazes met, sparks flew in the air. The two of them belonged to different factions. Jiang Yulong hated this pretty boy who was popular with women, while Duan Fei disliked this cold youth. Therefore, their relationship was terrible. Humph! When you are defeated, let's see which female disciple will surround you! Jiang Yulong snorted coldly. Xingqianer, my goddess! In the distance, a young girl in green slowly walked over. Her light and agile temperament made her seem like a fairy walking in the mortal world. Duan Fei and Jiang Yulong looked at the girl in green at the same time. Duan Fei nodded with a smile, but Jiang Yulong's expression was somewhat strange, and his gaze was somewhat evasive. Xingqianer bowed to the two of them. Then, a group of young girls greeted her, and she stood in another direction. At this moment, a group of youths from the southern district also walked over excitedly. Lin Xian wore a black robe and carried a dark red great sword on his back. There was a faint smile on his delicate face, and he looked extremely spirited. Older brother Xian, you must make it to the 3rd stage. When the time comes, we'll cheer you on, little Fatty Ding said while dancing with joy. Little Fatty, I don't need you to say that. Older brother Xian will definitely enter the 3rd stage. Furthermore, older brother Xian will definitely succeed in entering the inner sect. These youths chattered non-stop. The entire process was very joyous. Wow! So many beauties! Ding Xiaoping's eyes, which were like door slits, suddenly widened, and his saliva kept flowing down. If only I could marry one! Ding Xiaoping muttered. The other youths also looked like pigs, but when they heard Ding Xiaoping's words, they all revealed looks of disdain. Little Fatty, stop dreaming. Go home and hug your doll to sleep, Lin Xian's right neighbor, Ho Xiaoping, said. The doll was a cotton doll. Ding Xiaoping hugged it to sleep every day. These disciples often joked about it. Humph, don't be complacent. When older brother Xian becomes an inner sect disciple, he will definitely introduce one to me. Ding Xiaoping was not convinced. Lin Xian smiled and said, Don't worry, when the time comes, I will find you a fairy to be your wife. A group of youths laughed as they walked into the square, but the passers-by revealed looks of disdain. TSK! A group of bumpkins still want to enter the inner sect, overestimating themselves. I guess they're still dreaming. In a while, the 1st stage will shatter their dreams. Lin Xian and the others stepped onto the square and sighed again. The square stretched as far as the eye could see, as if there was no end to it. In front of them was a majestic palace surrounded by multicolored light, like an immortal palace. Here, Lin Xian saw Jiang Yulong and Duan Fei. The latter directly ignored him, while Jiang Yulong revealed a cruel smile. Lin Xian ignored them. All the grudges could be settled in the arena. There was no need to waste energy now. He slowly closed his eyes sharpening. However, not long after, he was shaken awake by the people beside him. Shangguan Luyun! It's Shangguan Luyun! Ding Xiaoping excitedly pulled Lin Xian. His expression was even more excited than seeing a peerless beauty. The surrounding friends were also excited as they stared unblinkingly at that figure. He is one of the 4 heroes of the outer sect, and he is also the #1 person on the outer sect rankings. It is said that his strength is even stronger than some inner sect disciples. Even Jian Yulong, Duan Fei and the others are suppressed by him to the point where they can't even raise their heads. Lin Xian was surprised. He turned his head and saw a person walking over from outside the square. This person was dressed in black and walked over step by step expressionlessly. Unlike the other geniuses, he did not have a group of supporters behind him, nor did he have a beehive-like beauty. Instead, he was alone. A single person was like the sky, suppressing everyone to the point where they could not raise their heads. After he arrived, all the noise disappeared. Even Duan Fei, who had been smiling, had a cold expression as he looked at him with some hostility. Jian Yulong gripped the sword in his hand tightly. His knuckles turned pale from the force. He stood in the middle of the square. The people around him subconsciously avoided him. No one could withstand his aura. It was as if he was born to be a king and needed everyone to look up to him. Only after a long time did someone dare to whisper. The surrounding atmosphere gradually returned to normal. At this moment, the clouds in the sky churned. In an instant, a strong wind blew, causing people's clothes to flutter. Everyone looked up in horror and realized that there was a person standing on top of the clouds. A purple-robed middle-aged man. He stood on top of the clouds and coldly looked down, as if he was a high and mighty god. Flying through the air! Lin Xian's pupils constricted. He felt an enormous pressure slowly being released from the purple-robed middle-aged man. It was as if an invisible hand was pressing down on him, causing him to suffocate. The purple-robed middle-aged man waved his hand. The clouds in the sky turned into a giant hand and pressed down on the void. In the next moment, everyone felt the ground shake as if there was an earthquake. What followed was a rumbling sound. When the surroundings returned to normal, the disciples realized that there was a huge mountain on the side of the palace. It appeared like a dream in front of everyone's eyes. This mountain is called Thundercloud Mountain. It has a total of 99 floors. It is the first stage of this selection. You will be qualified to enter the next stage after crossing this mountain. The purple-robed middle-aged man's voice was like a bell that echoed throughout the square. Now, the first stage begins. Chapter 46. Following the purple-robed middle-aged man's order, the entire square was in an uproar again. Countless disciples used their movement techniques and ran towards Thundercloud Mountain, afraid that they would be a step too late and be beaten to it by others. Plop! Plop! Most of the first batch of disciples who ran up Thundercloud Mountain suddenly knelt on the stone steps. Their originally rosy faces instantly turned pale. What's going on? Many disciples didn't understand what was going on, but when they stepped onto the first stone step, they immediately understood. A huge force pressed down on everyone, like a mountain that wanted to crush them. Soon, some disciples couldn't hold on any longer. The spirit energy in their bodies had been exhausted while resisting the pressure, and they fell weakly on the stone steps. In the next moment, a white light rose from under their feet. Then, with a flash of white light, these disciples disappeared. Although they didn't know where they went, one thing was certain: they had been eliminated. Only by completing the 99 stone steps under this huge pressure could they be considered to have passed. Humph! A bunch of idiots! Some of the stronger disciples sneered. Not long after, nearly 80% of the outer court disciples were eliminated. Only a few people were left, and some disciples had not stepped onto the stone steps. It's about time, let's go! Jian Yulong and the others walked forward and began to climb the stone steps. On the other side, Lin Xian and the disciples of the southern district also stepped onto the stone steps. So heavy! Ding Xiaoping gritted his teeth and said. Damn it, I'm about to be squashed! Ho Xiaoping cursed. Inject your spirit energy into your entire body and pay attention to your consumption. Lin Xian didn't feel that it was too strenuous. He didn't remind his companions. First step, second step, third step. After the 10th step, the pressure suddenly increased. Ding Xiaoping and the others couldn't hold on any longer and turned into white light and dissipated. Brother Xian, you must pass! The voices of Ding Xiaoping and the others echoed nearby. Lin Xian nodded and set off alone. He moved forward quickly, attracting the attention of the surrounding people. F***CK! Where did this fierce person come from, running so fast? Someone was surprised. Idiot, wait until your spirit energy runs out and you cry. There were also some people who were disdainful. Besides testing the outer court disciples' strength, the first test also tested their perseverance, strategy, and other external conditions. Those with high strength could naturally leave quickly. As for those with average strength, as long as they maintained the production and consumption of their spiritual energy and endured the pressure, they would eventually succeed. However, it was uncertain whether these disciples would be able to endure it. Ranked first was Shangguan Luyun. He had his hands behind his back and rushed forward as if he was flying. Occasionally he would stop, but he would quickly move again. Behind him were Duan Fei, Jiang Yulong, and the others. These people also far surpassed the other disciples, but the expressions on their faces were not relaxed. Every 10 levels will double the pressure. At the end, it will be 9 times the pressure. Furthermore, this pressure is different for everyone. The stronger you are, the greater the pressure you will feel, Lord Alcohol suddenly said. Looks like this isn't just a simple test of strength. There's also potential, perseverance, and many other aspects. Everyone's results are different. Lin Xian was stunned. He looked at the figure in first place, and for the first time, his expression changed. Yes, this is a battle with yourself. By breaking through your limits, you will be able to enter the next stage, Lord Alcohol said. Then come on, Lin Xian said in a deep voice. When they reached the 40th step, all the disciples' speed slowed down. Many of them were recovering their spirit energy on the spot. There was no other way about it. This was equivalent to 4 times the pressure. No one was an exception. Ranked first was still Shangguan Luyun. He stood upright like a javelin on the 63rd step, silently recovering his spirit energy. Below him was Duan Fei on the 57th step, Jiang Yulong on the 55th step, Xin Qian on the 55th step. Lin Xian stood on the 43rd step. His face was somewhat pale, but his breathing was not in disorder. From the looks of it, he wasn't tired, but he didn't continue going up. This was because when he stepped onto the 40th step, Lord Alcohol's voice sounded in his heart. He also told him that there was a faint power of lightning in the stone steps. This mountain is called Thundercloud Mountain. It's not rare for it to contain the power of lightning, Lord Alcohol said. Xiao Xuanzi, your opportunity has arrived. As long as you absorb the power of lightning and refine it into your spirit energy, you will have a lightning elemental spirit energy. Lin Xian did as he was told and stayed on every step for a period of time. Using the method provided by Lord Alcohol, he silently absorbed the power of lightning in the stone steps. A blue electric arc came out from the stone steps and drilled into Lin Xian's feet. It entered his body and crazily swam around. See! After the blue electric arc entered Lin Xian's body, it was like a ferocious tiger returning to its mountain as it crazily ran around. The power of lightning was constantly released, causing Lin Xian to grimace in pain. Humph! You want to challenge senior brother Jiang with this bit of ability? I advise you to scram! By the side, a divine might group disciple smugly overtook Lin Xian and mocked him to his heart's content. You can't even withstand this bit of pressure. You're indeed trash. Lin Xian closed his eyes and focused. He had no idea what was happening outside. He was condensing the spirit energy in his body to block the electric arc. When the Divine Might Group disciple saw no reaction from Lin Xian, he thought that he had accepted his fate. With a cold snort, he headed higher. At that moment, the blue electric arc in Lin Xian's body was wrapped into a ball by the blue spirit energy, temporarily isolating it. Lin Xian secretly heaved a sigh of relief as he curiously observed the blue electric arc. Lord Alcohol said, "From its might, the grade of this lightning isn't too weak. Thankfully, it's only a sliver and not the entire lightning source. Otherwise, with your present cultivation level, you wouldn't be able to subdue it." "What should I do now?" Lin Xian asked. "Refine this sliver first," Lord Alcohol instructed. "Use the fusion word art of the longevity art to fuse it into your spirit energy." Lin Xian expressed his understanding before circulating the longevity art to slowly melt the lightning's power. Outside, empty thundercloud. More and more disciples overtook Lin Xian. Many of them were disciples of the Divine Might group. When they saw Lin Xian, they looked at him with disdain. Some of the disciples who had heard of Lin Xian's challenge to Jiang Yulong shook their heads when they saw Lin Xian's performance. You still want to fight our Divine Might group? You don't know what's good for you." On the 50th step, Yan Kong sneered. "When we become inner sect disciples, we can crush him with one hand." On the 49th step, Hua Yumping's eyes flashed with a ferocious glint. At that moment, Lin Xian opened his eyes. The corners of his mouth suffused a smile as he stepped onto the 44th step. "He's moving! He's moving!" The nearby disciples who were resting turned their heads. They wanted to see the strength of the legendary youth who had fought against the Divine Might group. However, to their astonishment, Lin Xian stood on the 44th step and closed his eyes once again. "He's smiling like that after going up one step. What a weirdo! I thought someone who dared to challenge Jiang Yulong would be powerful. I never expected him to live up to his reputation." The nearby disciples no longer paid attention to Lin Xian. Chapter 47. Time passed bit by bit, and the crowd climbed higher and higher. Shangguan Luyun, who was in first place, had already reached the 85th step. His hands were no longer behind his back, but his entire body was suffused with spiritual light. He walked up step by step. It was obvious that 8 times the pressure was not easy for him. The person in second place was far behind him. Duan Fei stood on the 71st step. His handsome face was covered in sweat. He gritted his teeth and looked at the figure in front of him. Once again, he moved his feet with difficulty. Jiang Yulong, who was following closely behind him, panted heavily. He said hatefully, "I will definitely reach before you." Lin Xian stood on the 55th step. He had already absorbed a lot of the power of thunder and lightning. The spiritual power in his body had turned blue, and from time to time, electric arcs would flash. Crackle! A small portion of the power of thunder and lightning exploded in Lin Xian's hand, shaking his arm until it was numb. As expected of one of the most violent powers in the world, Lin Xian rubbed his arm. He had just merged with it, and could not fully control it. "When I finish the 99th step of the stone platform, I should be able to convert all the spiritual power in my body into the power of thunder and lightning," Lin Xian said with a smile. The spiritual power in his body was now abundant. "Lin Xian." Just as he was about to reach the 56th step, a weak voice suddenly came from behind him. It's you." Lin Xian turned around. "I realize that it's actually that shy girl, Yin Qingyi, behind me." Yin Qingyi wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand and said softly, "Hurry up and go. I can do it myself." Lin Xian smiled. "Do your best. I believe that you will catch up to me soon." With that, he stepped onto the 56th step and closed his eyes again. When he opened his eyes again, he realized that Yin Qingyi was standing at the side and secretly watching him. "Ah, you're awake," Yin Qingyi said with a red face. Let's go." Lin Xian stepped onto the next step again. Yin Qingyi, who was beside him, followed suit. After a few times, Lin Xian realized that Yin Qingyi was always in sync with him. It was not strenuous at all. Although Lin Xian was walking slowly, He was now able to quickly absorb and digest the tiny blue electric arcs after so many fusions. His current speed had left many people behind, but Yin Qingyi was still able to keep up with him. Lin Xian smiled and stepped onto the next stone step with her. By the time he reached the 79th stone step, more than 90% of Lin Xian's spiritual energy was of the lightning attribute. At this time, most of the people in front of him had already passed. When the first person successfully passed, the first stage would enter a countdown. After 2 hours it would end. The other disciples who had already passed the level were sitting on top of the mountain to rest, and they were looking at the disciples who were still climbing with a proud expression. Look, it's that Lin Xian. He actually dares to challenge senior brother Jiang Yulong. Among the disciples below, Lin Xian received the most attention. He's only climbed to the 79th step now. Looks like his strength isn't that great? Many people were puzzled. Lin Xian ignored those people and stepped onto the 80th step. In the next moment, his body shook. A golden electric arc drilled into his body, causing the blue electric arcs to riot. Not good! Lin Xian's expression changed. He could clearly feel the power contained in this golden electric arc. It was much stronger than all the blue electric arcs that he had merged with before. If he was not careful, he could be consigned to eternal damnation. Quick, look at that good-for-nothing's expression. Ha ha, I'm dying of laughter. Many disciples of the Shenwei group pointed at Lin Xian and laughed. He had just reached the 80th step and he was already like this. They reckoned that Lin Xian would not be able to finish the rest of the stone steps. Many disciples shook their heads. At the top of the mountain, other than Shangguan Luyun, who was sitting alone with his eyes closed, everyone else was staring at the disciples below. Jiang Yulong looked at Lin Xian with disdain. What a good-for-nothing. He doesn't even have the right to make me attack. Tang Yu stared nervously. Her big eyes flashed. This can't be. How can this bastard be so weak? When she saw Yin Qingyi beside Lin Xian, she could not help but pout and snort. Are you okay? Yin Qingyi saw that Lin Xian's face was pale. She used her hand to tug at the corner of Lin Xian's clothes. In the next moment, a faint golden electric current rushed towards her and quickly touched her small hand. Ah! Yin Qingyi cried out softly. The tip of the long sword in her hand was pointed downwards. Countless strange runes quickly formed around her, transmitting the golden electric current to the ground. All of this happened in an instant. The other disciples didn't notice it at all. Even if they did, they wouldn't care. Who would care about a disciple who could only stop at the 80th step? However, above the clouds, there were a few figures sitting cross-legged. Among them was the purple-robed middle-aged man. He suddenly opened his eyes and frowned. The lightning on Thundercloud Mountain seems to be rioting? Rioting? What rioting? Lei Yunzi, you are too sensitive. How can those little fellows below cause such a commotion on Thundercloud Mountain? Said the figure beside him. He was also a middle-aged man, but he had a mustache. Lei Yunzi scanned the area with his divine perception again and didn't find anything abnormal. Only then did he dispel the doubts in his heart. Lin Xian, who was below, slowly opened his glasses. A golden light flashed across his eyes. It was too dangerous just now. The golden electric arc nearly exploded in his body, but he managed to suppress it in the end. The lightning powers behind are too violent. With your present strength, it's best you don't absorb any more, reminded Lord Alcohol. Okay. Lin Xian nodded secretly. The spiritual energy in his body had completely transformed into the lightning attribute. Furthermore, it had a hint of golden light, making it twice as powerful as before. I didn't hurt you just now, did I? Lin Xian looked at Yin Qingyi apologetically. Yin Qingyi shook her head. Suddenly, her expression changed slightly. It's almost time. Then let's go, Lin Xian said. The two began climbing with all their might. However, Lin Xian had fused with the lightning of Thundercloud Mountain, so the pressure didn't affect him at all. Although Yin Qingyi walked slowly, it didn't seem to be strenuous for her. Are you a sword array master? Lin Xian asked as he looked at Yin Qingyi's strange sword moves. Yes. Yin Qingyi continued holding her sword with the tip pointed downwards. A translucent sword array formed around her, enveloping the two of them. This way, the pressure can be transferred elsewhere, Yin Qingyi explained. The two of them walked at a leisurely pace. They didn't seem like they were testing at all. Instead, they seemed like a couple taking a stroll. Finally, before the time was up, the two of them stepped onto the last step and passed the test. Humph! You actually wasted so much time. What a bunch of trash! Some of the Divine Might Group disciples said disdainfully. I advise some people to get lost quickly. If you only came up now, I'm afraid you won't be able to pass the second stage. If you have a death wish, I don't mind sending you on your way. Lin Xian's lips curled into a sneer. Do you believe that I won't throw you down the mountain right now? Chapter 48. Lin Xian's strength was beyond everyone's expectations. Although the disciples were indignant, they did not dare to make a move. They snorted coldly and turned away. Not long after Lin Xian arrived, the time for the first stage was up. The 99 stone steps were covered by clouds and became hazy. In the sky, the purple-robed middle-aged man appeared again. With a wave of his sleeve, hundreds of streaks of black light scattered and rushed towards the crowd. Lin Xian reached out at lightning speed and caught the object flying towards him. He discovered that it was a black token with the number 135 written on it. He looked at Yin Qingyi's token and realized that her number was 134. He estimated that he should be the 135th person to pass the first stage. I didn't expect that out of the tens of thousands of disciples, only a little more than 100 would pass the first stage. This selection is really strict. Lin Xian sighed. Congratulations on passing the first stage. Next, you will proceed to the second stage. The purple-robed middle-aged man in the cloud said. Go down the mountain. Someone will tell you what to do. The crowd descended the mountain. When everyone reached the flat ground, Thundercloud Mountain behind them emitted a loud boom and then slowly disappeared. The others did not feel much about it, but Lin Xian looked at it reluctantly. There are still so many golden electric arcs that I haven't had time to absorb. Shaking his head, Lin Xian suppressed the matter at the bottom of his heart and looked ahead. All disciples, go to the Central Martial Arts Arena. A clear voice sounded in everyone's ears. Then, the disciples who had passed the first stage walked towards the Central Martial Arts Arena. Looks like the second stage is an arena competition, Lin Xian thought to himself. Hey, you bastard! Why are you so slow in the first stage? Tang Yu deliberately slowed down in front. When she reached Lin Xian's side, she asked angrily. I'm sorry. I dragged senior brother Lin down, Yin Qingyi said softly beside Lin Xian. It's not that. Lin Xian quickly comforted Yin Qingyi and explained to Tang Yu. I was too excited yesterday and didn't sleep well. With two beauties accompanying him, Lin Xian once again attracted the attention of the crowd. Many male disciples stared at him fiercely. If looks could kill, Lin Xian would have died 1,000 times over. The Central Martial Arts practice field was very spacious. When Lin Xian and the others arrived, they discovered that many people had already gathered here. In the north was a golden viewing platform. Seated on it were some elders of the sect. On both sides of the golden viewing platform, there were many ordinary viewing platforms. They were spread out in a fan shape and were filled with people. As far as the eye could see, there was a sea of people, and it was extremely lively. Lin Xian and the other 140 outer sect disciples stood in front of the stage, quietly waiting. However, the lively atmosphere had already ignited their fighting spirit. Who wouldn't want to defeat a strong enemy in front of so many people and display their heroism? Moreover, this was the inner sect selection. If they performed well, they might catch the eye of one of the inner sect elders. Thinking of this, the youths were excited. Soon, streams of light flashed, and a majestic aura surged. A few figures landed on the arena. Their bodies were glowing with a dazzling light, like flames dancing. The long robes on their bodies fluttered in the absence of wind. Every one of them was like a god descending to earth. The entire martial arts practice field suddenly quieted down. Lin Xian felt as if a mountain was pressing down on him. The spiritual energy in his body boiled as he tried his best to resist the pressure. Whether it was Lin Xian or the other outer sect disciples, their faces turned pale as they looked at the figures on the stage in horror. Seeing this scene, the middle sect disciples must have known the content of the second round. On the stage, one of the middle-aged men with the square face said, "That's right. The second round is an arena battle. The number on the token in your hand represents your ranking in the first round. Each ranking will have a corresponding result and reward. The second round is the same. Now, let's talk about the rewards for the second round. First place will be rewarded with a pure spirit pill, a mid-mystic rank martial art, and a human rank artifact. Second place will be rewarded with a low mystic rank martial art and a small yellow pill." Hiss! All the disciples sucked in a breath of cold air. A mystic rank martial art and a human rank artifact. These things were definitely super tempting to martial artists. Moreover, there was a pure spirit pill. All the disciples would go crazy. What is a pure spirit pill? Lin Xian didn't understand. Country bumpkin! Tang Yu once again looked down on him. A pure spirit pill is a third-grade pill. The spirit power it contains is extremely pure. If an ordinary pulse condensation stage martial artist swallows it, they can instantly break through to the next stage. Moreover, if a pulse condensation stage martial artist swallows it, it can greatly increase their chances of entering the Spirit Sea realm. This is a treasure that all pulse condensation stage martial artists desire. Increasing one's cultivation by one stage and increasing the chances of entering the Spirit Sea realm. Lin Xian sucked in a deep breath. He must obtain such a good thing. Not only Lin Xian, but the other disciples' faces were also red. They couldn't wait to start the competition. The square-faced middle-aged man saw that the atmosphere was stirred up and smiled. Your ranking now represents the number of this round. If you are selected by the judges, you will go to the arena battle. Also, the first round's reward is that the top 10 do not need to participate in the first round. Now, the second round begins. 5 middle-aged men with high cultivation stood on 5 different stages and began to draw lots. Everyone looked at the top 10 in envy and prayed that their opponents in the first round would be weak. Not long after, the 5 judges began to announce the competitors. First arena, number 38 vs number 53. Second arena, number 77 versus number 63. The 10 disciples who were called out went on stage and prepared for the competition. Although the rankings in the first round were different, this didn't mean that number 38 would be able to defeat number 39. After all, the first round was only a test of perseverance and potential. It couldn't directly reflect a martial artist's actual combat ability. Sure enough, there was an upset in the first match. Number 53 defeated number 38 and obtained victory, advancing to the next round. Lin Xian and the others retreated to the side to watch. Shangguan Luyun sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate. In his opinion, none of these people were his opponent. Soon, the competition on stage finished. The judges called out the names again, and this time Lin Xian was one of them. 135 against 88. On the 5th fighting ring, Lin Xian walked up to the ring calmly. His opponent was already standing on the ring. Too cool. My luck is off the charts. I can actually fight against number 135. Looks like I can easily win this time. This was an ordinary-looking youth. He looked at Lin Xian, his eyes filled with pride. Lin Xian's face was calm. No joy or sadness could be seen. Jiang Yulong looked at Lin Xian and smiled disdainfully. He then turned his head. He didn't think that Lin Xian was worth paying attention to. Few of the top-ranked disciples paid attention to the 5th stage. Instead, they were all looking at the 2nd stage. It was a battle between number 15 and number 21. This kind of ranking was already considered an elite disciple and was worthy of their attention. Chapter 49. On the fifth ring, Lin Xian vs. Jin Su. Hee, kid, consider yourself unlucky to meet me. Jin Su laughed wildly. If you were willing to admit defeat, perhaps you would suffer less. Lin Xian was expressionless, carrying a dark red great sword on his back. He looked at Jin Su and said, You talk too much nonsense. Kid, since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Jin Su was furious. He slapped his scabbard and the long sword came out. His whole body turned into a ray of light, rushing towards Lin Xian. Good sword technique. Lin Xian raised his eyebrows. As expected of a disciple who passed the first round, your skills are indeed extraordinary. This sword technique already has a hint of sword force, incomparably sharp. Before the sword arrived, the sword chi had already arrived. Lin Xian was as still as a mountain. When the tip of the sword was about to arrive, he suddenly made a move. As fast as lightning, his palms slapped the sword body. Suddenly, the long sword that was stabbing towards Lin Xian deviated by 3 centimeters. Lin Xian did not stop. He flipped his palm, clasped his fingers, and flicked the sword body. Ding! A clear sound rang out. A fierce force traveled along the sword body to Jin Su's arm. As if hit by a heavenly hammer, Jin Su's palm cracked. The long sword flew out of his hand and shattered in the air, scattering on the ground. You! Jin Su held his right hand and retreated. There was no longer any arrogance in his eyes. He finally understood why Lin Xian was expressionless. It was because the two of them were not on the same level. I lost. He seemed to have lost his strength. Number 135 wins. The referee's voice rang out. What happened? Why is it over? Those who looked at the second ring asked, wanting to know what happened. What? Flicking the long sword with a finger and injuring Jin Su? Are you kidding? Jin Su is the 88th disciple. No, I must watch number 135's next match. Just as those disciples were discussing, a deafening shout came from the fifth ring. Senior Brother Lin is mighty. Brother Xian is handsome. Brother Xian took first place in one go. The spectator stands near the fifth arena were filled with Southern District disciples. There were also some disciples who often sparred with Lin Xian. When they saw that Lin Xian had won in one move, they all cheered. Apart from the core members of the 3 factions and the 4 heroes of the outer sanctum, few disciples could win so many cheers. Many disciples turned their heads to watch. Humph, looks like that trash is very popular. Yan Kong sneered. Don't worry about him. He won't amount to much. Our goal is to suppress the combat group. Jiang Yilong didn't care about Lin Xian at all. Lin Xian returned to the resting area. At this moment, the battle on stage number 2 had yet to end. The battle group disciples wielding battle sabers and the divine might group disciples wielding longswords were locked in battle. The 2 figures were as fast as ghosts, and the sky was filled with their afterimages. Ordinary disciples simply couldn't see what was happening, and only some of the stronger disciples were able to catch their movements. Lin Xian was naturally able to see their movements. He also realized that although the Divine Might group disciples' sword techniques were elegant, they were surrounded by their opponents. Within 10 moves, they would be defeated. Congratulations, the battle group disciples are about to win, Lin Xian said to Tang Yu with a smile. Tang Yu mischievously winked and didn't say anything. However, the Divine Might group disciples nearby couldn't bear to listen. Brat, what do you know? How dare you spout nonsense? That's right. Can you see the battle on stage clearly? In order to please a beauty, you dare to lie with your eyes wide open. I despise you. Those disciples didn't think that Lin Xian could see the battle on stage clearly, let alone determine who won and who lost. However, after 7 moves, these people almost bit off their tongues. The Divine Might group disciples had indeed lost. Moreover, after Lin Xian finished speaking, they immediately lost. Damn it, crow's beak! Brat, if you dare to spout nonsense again, I'll teach you a lesson. The Divine Might group disciples glared fiercely at Lin Xian. Lin Xian shook his head helplessly and ignored them. At this moment, he was recalling the battle on stage 2. These elite disciples were indeed not weak. Every one of them was very strong. He had also gained some experience from the battle. More than 100 disciples took turns to battle on stage. All kinds of moves were used. The spectating disciples cheered and exclaimed in satisfaction. Finally, the first round of the competition ended. Other than the top 10 disciples in the first round who didn't need to compete, half of the 130 disciples won and moved on to the second round. As there were 65 people competing, one person would get a bye. Those disciples who advanced closed their eyes and prayed silently, praying that they would get a bye. "Yin Chingy, you get a bye this round!" The square-faced middle-aged man's voice rang out. "Ah!" Yin Chingy's mouth was half open. She had a surprised expression on her face. The others were extremely disappointed. "Congratulations on successfully advancing," Lin Xian said with a smile. Thank you, senior brother Lin," Yin Chingy said with a red face. "Next, this is the second round of the competition. Number 135 against number 49. Such a big gap. Looks like it's going to be a blitz battle," some spectators said unhappily. Lin Xian didn't expect to be the first to go up. However, it was good. After the competition, he could return to the resting area to watch the others compete. Thinking of this, he stood up and carried his dark red sword on his back. Then, he slowly walked up to the stage. F***CK, this is the guy who cursed our Divine Might group. Senior brother Shui, teach him a lesson. The disciples of the Divine Might group shouted. Senior brother Shui, beat him. Countless disciples in the spectator stands were shouting. Shui Huaqing walked leisurely and enjoyed the cheers from the spectator stands. He knew that the cheers belonged to him. However, out of his expectations, a wave of unusual cheers sounded out from the nearby arena, and it was like the waves of the sea, each wave louder than the last. Senior brother Lin, do your best. I have faith in you. Beat him to death. You must beat him to death. Lin Xian, beat him to death with your sword. Brother Xian, we support you. The disciples of the Southern District are with you. That voice was so loud that it wasn't any weaker than the Divine Might groups. Many disciples who had advanced couldn't help but look over. I didn't expect that other than the three major powers, there would be someone with such a reputation. I'm looking forward to it. Near the golden spectator stands, a youth in black laughed. What, you want to rope him in? The youth beside him said. I'm just looking. The youth in black didn't say much. Instead, he looked at the stage. Kid, looks like there are many people supporting you. I wonder if they will be sad when you are defeated? Shui Huaqing sneered. In his opinion, Lin Xian dared to steal his limelight. He was simply courting death. I finally know why you all want to join the Divine Might group. Lin Xian said expressionlessly. Why? Shui Huaqing asked subconsciously. Because you are all idiots. Will you die if you don't talk nonsense when fighting? Lin Xian rolled his eyes. Very well, kid. I'm officially informing you now that I'm angry. Shui Huaqing said coldly. The consequence is that you have to leave lying down. Chapter 50. Shui Huaqing shouted angrily, and a light yellow spirit power burst out from his body, covering his entire body in an instant. The surrounding air waves spread out. In his palm, a ball of yellow spirit power spun at high speed, forming a sharp wind blade, extremely overbearing. Thousand-blade palm! Shui Huaqing pushed his palms towards Lin Xian, and the sharp wind from his palms was like thousands of blades, making a deep sound. Pun! Lin Xian was as steady as Mount Tai, and his right fist suddenly punched out. This punch used all the muscles in his body, and the power was concentrated on his fist according to the thunderclap sword art. The two figures collided, and a terrifying energy wave swept out in all directions. The audience in the front stage was blown back by this gale. On the stage, Lin Xian was as tall as a mountain, and his face was as calm as water without a trace of change. On the other hand, Shui Huaqing was pushed back a few steps, and his breathing became rapid. The audience in the stands felt a chill, especially the disciples of the godly might group. They were clear about Shui Huaqing's strength. He was at the peak of the 5th level of the pulse condensation period, and his 1,000-blade palm was practiced to the large success stage. Under normal circumstances, he could even contend against a 6th-level pulse condensation period disciple, but now he was pushed back by a single punch. Duan Fei, Jiang Yilong, and the others were also surprised. Even the silent Qian looked at Lin Xian a few more times. "If we don't get rid of this kid, he'll be a disaster." Jiang Yilong suddenly remembered his agreement with Lin Xian. He had forgotten about it, but Lin Xian's stunning performance made him remember. "Damn this guy, how can he be so strong?" Shui Huaqing's face was ugly. He had already said that he wanted Lin Xian to crawl out of here. If he couldn't do it, then he would lose face. "Yellow wind step!" Shui Huaqing ran quickly, and his body became blurry. Gradually, his afterimage appeared on the stage. "Wind dash the world!" Shui Huaqing, who was moving at high speed, attacked again, fusing the wind from his palms into his movements. Originally, his movement technique was a mid-yellow rank martial art, and his palm technique was also a mid-yellow rank martial art. But when the two were combined, the power broke through the mid-yellow rank, and faintly had the power of a high-yellow rank martial art. "This brat has some ideas," Jiang Yilong said solemnly. Lin Xian took a deep breath when he sensed the ferocious wind coming from the palm. Then, he stomped his foot on the ground and dashed forward. Rolling thunder! His right fist punched out without any fancy moves. It was purely relying on brute force to crush his opponent. Boom! The palm wind that Shui Huaqing was so proud of couldn't even withstand a single blow from Lin Xian. It shattered like an exquisite porcelain. Puff! His body slid back more than 10 meters and flew out of the ring, falling to the ground. What powerful strength! Some of the disciples who had advanced began to pay attention to Lin Xian and secretly estimate his strength. Some of them had already regarded him as an opponent and began to search for his weakness. Duan Fei narrowed his eyes. He didn't expect that the little sword slave he met 3 months ago would have grown to such an extent. "Looks like your godly might group's situation isn't too good." Luoi laughed as he crossed his arms. "Humph!" Yan Kong's face was gloomy. He couldn't wait to go up and kill Lin Xian. Jiang Yilong's eyes flickered. No one knew what he was thinking. As for Shangguan Luyun, who was ranked first, he closed his eyes and pondered. It was as if nothing could attract his attention. The competition continued. The disciples on the ring fought with all their might. Brilliant light overflowed, terrifying spiritual energy fluctuations, and cheers shook the sky. Duan Fei's appearance pushed the scene to its climax. His handsome face was enough to kill most of the female disciples. Coupled with the title of the Outer Sex 4 Heroes, the entire martial arts practice field was calling Duan Fei's name. "This guy, after entering the inner sect, is a pretty good seedling," said a black-clothed youth near the golden stands. "But he's a member of the combat group. I'm afraid you can't poach him, right?" The youth beside him didn't hold back. "Humph, what big 3 organizations? It's just a name made up by a group of bored people. The situation outside is urgent. The safest relationship is obviously in a small group," said the black-clothed youth. The youth beside him shook his head helplessly and didn't say anything else. On the golden arena, some of the sect elders looked at Duan Fei and chuckled as they said, "A few decent fellows have appeared in the selection competition this time around. Oh, I wonder which one's elderly has taken a fancy to? I think the Outer Sex 4 heroes are pretty good," said elderly with a smile. "You old fox, you're too greedy." Another elder blew his beard and said, "I still think the top 10 are pretty good." "Old Fong, which little fellows do you think are pretty good?" someone asked Elder Fong. Elder Fong stroked his beard and said with a smile, "I think that Lin Xian is pretty good." "What do you think?" "Lin Xian? I don't remember." The elders shook their heads. Elder Fong didn't mind. He changed the topic and talked in another direction. On the ring, Duan Fei moved like a gust of wind. His speed was so fast that no one could react. In the end, his opponent was stunned. When Duan Fei stepped down from the ring, countless female disciples screamed. This made Jiang Yulong very unhappy. When he went on the ring, his opponent was unlucky. He was sent flying by the sword and kept vomiting blood. After that, Xin Qianer, Yan Kong, Luo Yi, Tang Yu, and the others went on the ring and won. However, when the referee announced the next round, the entire martial arts practice field suddenly became quiet. There was only one name that could have such magical power, and that was Shangguan Luyun. His opponent was number 23, but his opponent had directly given up, which made everyone feel quite disappointed. The second round ended and the third round began. Fortunately, Yin Qingyi got a bye once again. This made her a little dazed, and it made countless disciples jealous to death. In the third round, the contestants who were ranked at the top once again displayed their powerful strength. In the third arena, disciple number 15, Wei Yong, looked at Jiang Yulong in horror. One move, just one move, and he was defeated. He didn't dare and was helpless. However, he didn't dare to challenge again. In the first arena, disciple number 17, Guifan Wu, moved his long sword. The gorgeous sword light filled the entire space. He stabbed out 1,300 times in a row. Even the void was trembling, but he didn't touch the corner of Duan Fei's clothes. After 1,300 sword strikes, Duan Fei sent him flying with just one palm. In the fifth arena, Lin Xian's opponent was Luo Yi. "Ha, Brother Lin, I didn't expect you and I would have such a battle." Luo Yi laughed. "Yeah." Lin Xian couldn't help but sigh. He remembered that when he first came to the duty hall, he got to know Luo Yi. Later on, Luo Yi's footwork aroused his interest. "I hope senior brother Luo won't show mercy," Lin Xian said in a deep voice. Luo Yi was stunned. Usually, when they were polite, they would say that they hoped for mercy. However, Lin Xian actually said that he hoped for mercy. However, he knew that Lin Xian said that because he didn't want him to have any misgivings. "Brother Lin is straightforward. Then I won't be polite." Luo Yi laughed loudly. He took a step forward, and like a flickering shadow, his body directly appeared in front of Lin Xian. "You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.